We have a quorum. So I will open this meeting of the Thompson Springs Special Service District Administrative Control Board. The date is October 19th, 2021. The time is 4:01. Commissioners that are present are Evan Clapper, Gabriel Wojtek, Sarah Stock, Trish Hedin, Jacques Hadler. I do not see Kevin and Kevin Walker. So 100% of the commission are present. We also have our county administrator and associate administrator, Chris Baird, administrator and associate, Mallory Nassau, Tara Collins, who is our administrator assistant, and Quinn Hall, our clerk auditor. Okay. The first business of order is citizens to be heard on an agenda regarding Thompson Springs Special Fire District. Do we have anybody on the call that would like to speak on Thompson Springs? Okay, we will move to the next agenda item, which is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion for the approval of minutes?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Kevin Walker. Do I have a second? Seconded by Sarah Stock. Discussion? All in favor? Say aye or raise your hand or both. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are now to ratification of payment of bills. Do I have a motion? The total bills are $8,701.49. The payroll is, which one's the payroll? And then both of them say total bills. Quinn?
Let me look at it. I gotta pull it up. Mary, I believe the second one, the $6,000 one, is the payroll, because we've got those.
Okay. So the total bill, total bills are in $8,701.49. Payroll is $6,681.64. Total bills and payroll, $15,383.13. Does someone have a motion to approve bills?
I move that we approve bills as you just described them.
Okay, motion by Kevin Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Gabriel Wojtek. I just thought, do we have any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. I just got a message from Jacques. He's having technical difficulties. He'll rejoin us shortly. Mark, good to see you. So we will have you give the report. Thank you.
Greetings. Okay, well, I'll start off with the most recent incidents. On September 26th, we had a semi-tractor trailer roll over on I-70 at mile marker 179. I responded to that. Luckily, there was no hazmat involved. It was pretty cut and dried rollover. Green River Ambulance did show up and take care of the one patient. On October 12th, we had a breathing difficulty about 3 in the morning at one of the Thompson trailer parks. The person was in pretty serious condition, and I assisted with patient care in the back of the Grand County Ambulance, and we took the patient back to Moab Regional Hospital. As far as facilities go, just been getting ready for the winter. Last year, we were having some issues with the furnace. We had the smell of carbon monoxide, which is not good. The furnace was inspected by a professional and issues were resolved, and the heating is, the furnace is good, and then the propane heater out in the bays, it seems to be functioning fine. So that's great. And I did also winterize the fire station load out. That's separate from the fire hydrant, but if that's not winterized in time, then that'll freeze and some pipes will break. So that's all been taken care of, and we should be ready for the winter now. Training on September 29th, I conducted a training. I was invited to speak or give a lesson to Grand County EMS in regards to wildland fire and responding to larger incidents. I've been doing that for about 20 years, so I gave my 2 cents. Is really good. Had some really good questions by them, and it's a good source of revenue for them and experience for the EMTs to go out on these larger incidents all over the West, basically. On October 8th and 9th, the Moab Valley Fire Department sponsored the Moab Regional Fire School, and they had some great training there. They had 2 days of advanced auto extrication training, which was fantastic. There was instructors from the big departments up north, lots of cars to cut up, and we got a lot of hands-on experience, advanced experience in cutting up cars and getting patients out of those cars. So that was great, and I appreciate Moab putting that on. One other thing is I did on October 7th, I participated in the interagency, so that'd be federal, state, and volunteer fire departments. Interagency fire meeting was held at Spanish Trail Arena, and basically it was all the wildland fire people from the area. And we talked about several different fires, and the big one of focus for us was the Pat Creek fire. And we talked about some things that were done really well and some ways we can improve in the future. So that was good. And that's about all I have for now.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of our chief? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mark. There is no new business. There's no old business or future considerations, public hearing, or closed session. We have reached the end of our agenda, so I will adjourn this meeting of the Thompson Springs Fire District. And we will move to our regular agenda. Okay, thank you. We're called to order. The date is October 19th, 2021. The time is 4:08. All commissioners are present. Wojtek, McGann, Stock, Walker, Hadeen, Hadler, and Clapper. We also have our clerk auditor and our associate and assistant administrator and our office, Tara Collins, Mallory Massall, and Chris Baird. The first order of business is citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens that wish to be heard? Mallory?
I'm very sorry there's an echo. There are a few people on. I'm not sure if there's a comment. So if you are on, could you please turn on your camera or press *6 to unmute? Sarah, are you okay? Go ahead.
Are you ready for me to go?
Yes.
I was calling in to ask you guys to consider holding off on approving the letter, giving support to the Mill Creek Community Collaborative plan for the canyon until Moab Solutions is submitting a plan called A+. We've made arrangements with the BLM, and that would become part of any environmental assessment moving forward. We're going to have it to them in a couple of weeks. There was not total consensus in the collaborative, and it was more than 2. It was about 4 or 5. We think our plan will make everyone happy and also serve the purpose of protecting the canyon. So in light of the fact that next week I'll have spent 18 years doing work in there, and I have a lot of on-the-ground experience, You consider just waiting until you have a chance to look at this alternative we're presenting? Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was Sarah Melankoff. Thank you. Any other citizens to be heard?
Mary, there are some people that have joined. I guess I'll give another reminder. Press star 6 to unmute or turn on your camera. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody at this time now.
Okay, we will conclude this portion of the citizens to be heard. Citizens will have another opportunity at 6 o'clock. We are to approval of the minutes for October 5th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mary, to approve the commission meeting minutes from October 5th, 2021.
I'll second.
Motion by Trish, seconded by Jacques. Discussion? I will be abstaining from this vote because I was not present at that meeting, nor was Gabriel Wojtek. Any discussion?
Yep.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand or say aye or both. Minutes approved. Anyone opposed? Minutes approved by 5 with 2 abstaining, Gabriel Wojtek and Mary McGann. Ratification of payment of bills. Do I have a motion?
Chair, if I may,
Yes, that would be great.
I'd make a motion to approve Grand County bills for October 19th, 2021. Total bills in the amount of $1,010,284.45. Total payroll in the amount of $269,775.04. Total bills and payroll combined in the amount of $1,280,059.49.
Thank you. Thank you. Do I have a second? Seconded by Jacques. Discussion? All in favor of ratifying the payment of bills? Raise your hand or say aye. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to commission member disclosures. Do we have any commission members that have anything to disclose on an item that's on this agenda? No one has anything to move, so we are moving to general commission reports and updates. I'm going to begin today, which is unusual. To begin with, I want to do a future consideration. I would like the county staff to review the development application for the Star Ranch development application in San Juan County and report back to the commission regarding current legal status, entitlement, and appeal standing, and future development referrals between San Juan County and other adjacent jurisdictions, and Grand County providing options for collaborative reviews and referrals. So for future consideration, I would like our planning staff and any other staff that should be involved to do that kind of report.
And Mary, it sounded like you said Star Ranch. It was Sky Ranch?
I meant Sky Ranch. If I said Star Ranch, excuse me. Thank you for catching that, Kevin. Sky Ranch. So thank you. So I'll let you give that message again to John, our planning director, John Gunther. Then I'm going to only report on one thing that I've done in the last 2 weeks, because I want to spend 4 minutes on this. And it's in regards to a program that Gabriel and I learned about when we went to the summit, that has the potential of saving us a great deal of water. And it's about a way to enrich our soils and make our soils more productive. So Mallory, would you play that for me? Thank you.
Yes, can you let me know if you see?
We can see it. It hasn't started yet.
Okay.
Commissioner McGann, this is just a quick explanation of what we are and how we can help your county. My name is Daniel Clough. I am with Back to Life. We're going to explain a little bit of what the condition is that we're trying to address and what we are. If you look at, well, many of you have seen these pictures for the past season, the progression of drought in the past 3 years, and also assessing how much water is being used. Agriculture uses roughly 82% of our water, but as water that goes to municipal and industry, roughly 60 to 70% of our water is used on the outside. The concept, what we are trying to do is to do a two-part value. One, to effectively manage your water to where you can reduce the amount of water that you're using, and also trying to environmentally enhance your soil by forming soil. And we do this with a natural process. We're a company called Back to Life, and our logo kind of shows that we're reducing the human footprint on Earth and the resources that we consume. By properly putting the proper bacteria into your soil, we can actually make it to where you can reduce the water and also maximize the environmental impact of your lawn. We were trialed this year as a water conservation program in the region of Iron County. We had more than 132 lawns at the end of the year, but at one point we had just over 116 lawns that were saving roughly 1.18 million gallons of water in August alone. That was our peak value in our trial period. On average, we save about 2,000 gallons of water per customer per week once the soil is conditioned. The big picture is within a grow season, if we started in April, by the time we get to May, June, we could have 30 to 50% less water being used for lawns and keep them green and at the same time improve soil. As you say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Here's an example of one of our clients. We're more than water conservation. When you put the proper soil biology back into the lawn, you actually just heal it. So we did not use any fertilizer in these pictures here. We use bacteria and the proper fungi. And this lawn, when we started with it, had many issues. It was actually being overwatered, not underwatered. It looks like that. And it was being depleted because of a very effective pathogenic fungus. And we call it summer spot. We were able to put in the right fungus and bacteria within 92 days. We reduced the water needs by 92%. This lawn right here was using 90% more water than this lawn right here.
Mallory, can we get back to the
with a natural product. We are working very hard on
something happened. Anyway, I will close it up. That gives you a good idea what we learned about. And so this is, of course, their very, very busy season. Is it going to go? Should we complete it? It's almost done.
Bit more about this. Our company right now is located in Cedar City, Utah. We're a homegrown company here. We create and distribute our own product. We have many people that work for us. And basically, that's who we are. I have additional information that I have sent with your commissioner to go through this, but I just wanted to give a brief introduction of what we are and what we'd intend to do. If we were able to come into a community, ideally in Washington County, for example, if I had 1,000 acres of property, I can create enough water for 14 to 26,000 residents after the first year, conservatively. And that's with a 30 to 50% water savings. We do so much from a natural process. If I could explain it simply, right now, we are using an artificial process to give you a lawn. If I reinsert a natural process, I can make it to where you pollute your environment less, use less fertilizer, and actually have a biological enhancement called your lawn rather than a resource drain. I hope that was a good enough introduction. If there are any questions, please email me at daniel@backtolife.com. You can visit our information landing page right now at backtolife.weebly.com. We're in the process of getting a digital website up, but if there are any questions, please reach out to me. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
So I was very excited about this presentation, and I spoke with the two gentlemen that gave the presentation. And I'm looking at in January when, because right now they're really busy finishing up their season and coming and talking to Grand County, the maintenance people in Grand County, the city, the cemetery district, the golf courses, because you think of all the lawns and everything that we have in all those facilities, it's huge. And and they're working with Utah State as well as Southern Utah University. So it sounds fairly possible that it could be a great way for us to save a lot of water. So that I'll keep you posted on. Because I spent so much, are there any questions from anyone? I'll send you the rest of the information, but I'm hoping that this turns out to be a good way to move forward in our county. So that I won't share anything else. Gabriel, would you like to do your report?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I have a little bit of catching up to do. Didn't get to give some updates from being absent at the last meeting, and thanks to Kevin for chairing that meeting, and for everyone else for for being in attendance in our stead. On the 23rd of September, I attended a Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments meeting. There is within that office, there is a still financing available through the revolving loan fund, up to $400,000 in that pot of money. It's typically used for business development and expansion. So that's something I'd like to try to help get the word out, because that pot of funding is still available. There were some congressional updates from Romney's office, mainly centered around restoration of the monuments. And then also, I think most interestingly, some talk about the windfall of funds and sort of the potential once in a generation pot of funding around infrastructure. And Commissioner Bruce Adams of San Juan County is planning a meeting on November, I want to say it's November 19th, with UDOT, and it's going to take place in Moab, and he's planning on a presentation to push for expansion of lanes on Highway 191 to Highway 6, and that's kind of been something that he's sort of harped on in past meetings, and it looks like he's going to make a push for wherever appropriate to expand to 4 lanes along that corridor, and he did request participation from this commission if we so choose. So that's something that could be worth discussing and being involved in. The 28th, I attended Four Corners Community Behavioral Health meeting. The Moab building update is 30% into its timeline, so it's pretty well underway and on time. So that's going well. Pouring retention walls and foundation work still at this point. And then some conversation about how to handle unvaccinated staff as certain requirements and mandates come down from the federal government. And because the current word is unvaccinated staff won't have the option to be tested rather than vaccinated. So that's and that would pertain to 19 out of 100 of the staff at Four Corners. And so that's kind of going to be a tricky thing to navigate for Four Corners, that, especially as we can all imagine, they're, have a very hardworking staff, and, oftentimes understaffed, as many agencies are. I also on that day attended the Southeastern Utah Health Department board meeting. There's an initiative going on right now with radon testing, and so that should be available to. I think there's going to be some public outreach going on in the near future here. I was actually given a radon test for my own home as part of a sort of getting some of those tests out. But that's going to be an upcoming emphasis of the health department. One new recommendation or guideline from the Southeastern Utah Health Department is that with regards to COVID, is that folks who have been exposed to someone with a positive test or an infection of COVID will not be subject to quarantine if they themselves are within a window of 12 months of being infected themselves. It's a little bit confusing, but previously the recommendation was that when someone tested positive, anyone that might have been in close contact with them should also quarantine in addition to that person who tested positive. But now the recommendation from the health department is that if those people had been infected within the last 12 months and recovered, that they actually don't have to quarantine themselves. It's kind of interesting. It definitely garnered some discussion in terms of, when is the right time to loosen up some of these things. But Brady Bradford felt that given some of the national recommendations and the CDC recommendations, that this was reasonable at the time. Aside from that, some conversation about the merging of behavioral health and public health on the state level, the Health and Human Services and the Department of Health merger. I'm still kind of gathering information and learning about that and how it might affect our local health department and behavioral health agencies. So hopefully I'll have more to report that in the future. And had a great time at the summit with Mary. Had some inspiring experiences, learning about things like designing visions and strategy and building teams. And we got to have a dinner with the governor, and he gave us a nice speech, and he didn't actually stay and eat, but I won't hold it against him. He's a busy guy. That's all I have for today.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriel. Sarah?
Hello. I only have one meeting that I attended in the last 2 weeks. So that was the Community Renewable Energy Program. And an exciting update on that end is we just agreed to hire an attorney, a team of attorneys based out of Salt Lake who work on utility and renewable energy and energy to help represent our coalition of communities in our attempt to get a good negotiation with Rocky Mountain Power and the Public Service Commission. So things are moving forward. I am nobody from Southern Utah is on the program, or at least from Grand County. I'm not sure about Springdale. But nobody from representing the more rural areas of the state is actually on the program development team. And there's going to be some proprietary information shared within that group. So it's not really open, but hopefully we can build strong trust with the rest of the communities and folks on that team so we can have a sense of what's going on. But I was kind of disappointed that none of us down here qualify to be on something like the Program Development Committee because we haven't pursued renewable energy in the past. So nobody has experience. But I'm still excited about the group. I think they're moving forward and there's a lot of experience in that group and we're lucky to be teaming up with them. So that's it.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Kevin?
In the past couple of weeks, I attended a couple of Budget Advisory Board meetings, which were long and detailed, but I don't think I need to summarize them here because Chris is probably going to give us a very thorough summary in the near future. So I think that's all I have to report on.
Thank you, Kevin. Trish?
Can you hear me, Mary?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. So I have only been to 2 meetings. Last night we had a Thompson Springs Special Service District water meeting. I think the big theme that came out of that is we have had a return of the the water survey, and it reflected there was a lot of positive things. Their capacity to store water is intact, their infrastructure is intact, all of that is great. They are deficient on source capacity, and about 40% deficient. And as you look into the future, without more source development, that number is expected obviously to go up. That being said, we are also sitting on 18 existing applications for water taps. And so in the meeting last night, we moved into approval of that water study, which was approved, but also the concept of, do we further the moratorium that the district put in place a while ago, and we decided to do that. That was quite a discussion. There was quite a number of individuals that wanted to move forward with giving more water taps, and we finally decided to extend the moratorium until further source capacity is in play. And so that being said, I've been extremely impressed by the new board. There's 3 really young, vibrant individuals, and I shouldn't say I think older people can be vibrant too. I think I can be that person, but they're just really young and they have a lot of energy and they're going for it. They're writing a lot of grants. They're just, they're doing a ton of work, and so it's great. So I think they're going to hopefully do the best they can for that community, but that's where we sit with that. We've also been working really closely with Matt Kennedy from RCAC on looking closely at just the bylaws within that special service district, the overall structure, the fee structure that they have going on, and he's been helping a lot. And so that was I had a meeting this morning with a couple board members and Matt, and looking over just kind of their overall structure. So things are really moving forward, and I think it's been really positive. I do want to state that every time I go to that meeting, for some reason I put it in my head like, okay, this meeting's going to be an hour and a half, and it's 3.5 hours. But I just need to become more realistic. That community has a lot of just a lot of passion. So that's it. I am done, Mary.
Mary,
You
you're
might be.
muted, I think.
Jacques?
All right. How's my sound? I've been having internet difficulties this afternoon.
Sounds good.
Okay. I only attended 2 meetings this last couple of weeks. A trail mix meeting where the primary topic was the Trail Ambassador program and how that's going. Generally felt like it's been very successful, and we hope to continue that next spring. Also an OSTA meeting. We had canceled the August and September meetings, so we had a lot to cover. Some of the main points were dealing with the systemic water line breaks that they've been dealing with out there, and also the need for a new fire suppression system at OSTA. And we also discussed budgeting needs for OSTA for the upcoming budgeting season. And that's about it for me.
Thank you, Jacques. Evan?
Yeah, I've just been working on reviewing some of the preliminary 2022 budgets for upcoming budget hearing season. I'm happy to report that I heard from the EMS board today that there was a very well-attended dispatch meeting. The county's own emergency coordinator called that meeting. It was attended by dispatch, sheriff, EMS, Moab PD, BLM, Park Service, Utah Highway Patrol. I feel like I'm forgetting some people as well, but they all kind of agreed to a standing monthly meeting in terms of trying to improve dispatch. It was mostly operational
discussions, so they didn't feel like they needed a representative from our body there. But I look forward to kind of hearing improvements as those come on. Another thing with EMS is the building is slightly delayed. The contractor's still reporting that it should be mid-November that EMS is able to move in and take over that and move out of all the spaces they're in now. But the director feels like December is probably going to be more realistic. Another thing worth reporting is there is an upcoming Rural EMS Directors Conference happening in 2 weeks. Those locations kind of bop around the state. And this, I don't know how often they happen, but this time it will be hosted in Moab. So that's exciting. And there's going to be some talks about legislative priorities and working on drafting some bills in regards to rural EMS, and which also means there will be some players from up north coming down to attend the conference. So I plan on having lunch and sticking around for some of those discussions, but hopefully our own Representative Albrecht, who's always been very supportive and worked hard for rural EMS, will be in attendance in person. So hopefully get to kind of bend his ear on not just EMS stuff, but other things that we should either be looking out for in the legislative session or things we'd like him to look out for. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your hard work. Appreciate it. We are to elected officials reports. Do I have any elected officials attending that has something they would like to report? Christina?
Just quickly letting folks know that the courts have resumed jury trials for the first time since COVID started. We just had our first one about a week ago. The public is not allowed inside the courtroom, but they are videoing everything, streaming it live for the public. If you want to observe a jury trial, you do need to contact the court directly for the link. The observation video is not perfect, but I think it worked out pretty well on our first one. And then you do have defense and prosecution in person. We have quite a backlog of trials that have been delayed for 2 years. So my office, despite being understaffed, like most everyone, has quite a busy fall ahead of them. But mostly wanted to let the commission know. I know, folks, I've been getting a lot of comments about jury notices and stuff. So wanted the commission to know, but also the public, that those are resuming full steam ahead.
Thank you, Christina. Is there any other elected officials that have something they'd like to report? Okay, we will move on to Commission Administrators Report. Chris and Mallory.
Thank you, Mary. Mostly I've been working on the budget. It's crunch time for that process. As I've indicated before, need to have a tentative budget to you for your approval first week in November. There's a lot of decision points this time around, and so just kind of give the caveat that the tentative budget's going to be rougher than normal, and we'll need a lot of refinement through November. And so we'll need to maybe tonight talk about scheduling some budget meetings in November and figuring out which day would work best for the commissioners, because there's a lot to decide. Also working with Mallory and Renee on the compensation study. I mean, it's a fairly complicated one this time around. Obviously, we've got a lot of jobs in the $15 to $21 an hour range, which is making it difficult to recruit in those areas. And I've been working on a formula for increasing those positions and then blending that into the rest of the pay scale. And also another significant complication is that the national inflation rate is about 5.4% right now. A lot of federal agencies have been giving 6% COLAs. The market data that we have is, either from this year or the last couple of years, and so it doesn't include any COLA. And so, it's looking to be like it could be a pretty expensive adjustment. And there's several newly proposed positions and reclassified positions the commission will have to make a decision point on also. I think that we're probably going to have to make some cuts from the full proposals. So I guess brace yourself for that because we probably won't have enough money to approve everything, and we'll have to cut back. So yeah, think about, through this meeting, maybe think about what days might work best for you. Well, I'd probably like to schedule one a week in November to try to get everything hammered out. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mallory.
Okay, kind of what Chris covered, just working on the salary study stuff, trying to help where I can because Chris has a tremendous amount on his plate right now. An exciting update is that Matt has gone ahead and ordered some things for the hybrid meeting setup. So as we get those rolling in, we'll start testing things out, and I'm sure it will take a little tweaking, but we are making some progress. So, and thank you to Matt for researching all of this stuff and putting up with my crazy ideas. The last thing that I'll share that I would probably say at the end, but for the public who are on, to make sure that they're aware, the next meeting for the commission is actually on the first Wednesday of the month, which is November 3rd, and that's due to the elections. So please note, if you're interested in joining, it'll be Wednesday instead of Tuesday. And that's all that I have.
Mallory,
Thank
I have
you,
a
Mallory.
question. Maybe I'm misremembering, but wasn't there a discussion at the last meeting that because the election isn't being run in the courthouse, just holding it on Tuesday as usual would be an option?
I think it would be an option. The only potential question is that we have to advertise all of the meeting dates at the beginning of the year. And I think this one would have been on there for a Wednesday. We could certainly modify that.
So this is Chris. I wouldn't actually recommend that because there's same-day voter registration on election day now, and everybody has to register to vote in the clerk's office, even though it's a city election. I think they might
fill out their
provisionally.
provisional ballot in city hall. Okay.
Huh?
Anyway, if it's not convenient, I take it back.
But I would recommend against it. Like I said, I think it's best not to have a meeting on election day.
I'll weigh in and agree. I think Kevin, I think you're right. There will be some folks from Utah County down at Moab City that will also be processing registrations. But typically, I would agree with Chris. We don't want to have a meeting on election day.
Yeah, and I think aren't you the only person that can register people to vote? What's the process, Quinn, for people registering to vote on election day? You got that?
They're not registering, they're just filling out a provisional ballot, which then gets forwarded to Quinn, I think, something like that.
Well, it would go to Utah County because they're the ones counting the ballot. The registration would eventually land in our office, yes. But yeah, I think same day would be provisional over at the city. And I'd have to follow up with Janet to see if we're going to do registrations here. There was some discussion about that, but I don't remember the disposition at the end.
Okay. Regardless, I think you're going to be pretty busy, Quinn, even, certifying the registrations that come in via whatever avenue.
Yeah, I agree. I would not have the meeting conflict the election day.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's traditionally, yeah. So, okay. Mallory, do you have anything else to report, Mallory?
No, that's it. Thanks, Mary.
Okay, we are to department reports. We have a report on the library. Carrie Valdez.
Hi, everyone. Can I just get confirmation you can hear me first?
Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
Great. Okay. I promise to be quick. Those that know me know I can talk about the library forever, but I saw your agenda and Mallory said, hey, keep it short. So not a problem. I will do that. As you are probably aware, the last year and a half has been a little weird, and that has obviously translated into library service as well. We've done a lot over the last 18 months in regards to curbside service and library service away from the actual building. As of right now, we are completely open to the public. Of course, the county mask mandate is in place for those that are here, and we are not currently providing any type of elementary age programming at the building, simply because that age group cannot get vaccinated at this point. But we are looking towards changing that as circumstances change. So just very briefly, some of the things that that have happened. We have been very, very successful in getting CARES money the first year and ARPA money this year. And I just wanted to share with the commissioners some of the grants that have been received and some of the services that those grants have paid for and will continue to pay for into the future. This year alone, we're looking at about $80,000 in ARPA money for the library. We have 50 hotspots with unlimited data that circulate to patrons that need internet. And some of that money has gone towards providing that data plan, those data plans for those hotspots that circulate. We have an outdoor film series that we have started with a very large screen and an excellent sound system for outdoor events. We have received some money to improve our physical collection, books, DVDs, and audiobooks for circulation. We've installed wireless printing that allows people to print from their devices and not even need a library computer. And they can actually do it from outside the building, and we can deliver those prints to them via curbside service if they're hesitant about coming into the building. Some of the grants coming up that have already been funded, we're getting some solar powered Wi-Fi enabled benches that we're hoping to put three around town for people to have internet access, as well as the ability to charge devices. That's a partnership with the Multicultural Center and the Free Health Clinic at this point. And then we have applied for a grant that we have not yet heard on that will be to completely redo the large meeting room here at the library so that when we are at a position to do indoor programming again, the technology that's in that room is obsolete at this point. The buildings, we moved in 2006. So we're looking at 15-year-old technology that we're hoping to replace. And then the last grant is a little outside of kind of regular library service, but I'm very excited about it. And it is a hydroponic garden that will be here in the library. And this is a partnership with the Youth Garden Project. And there's a K-5 curriculum where during the wintertime, the kids that are involved with the Beacon program will be coming over from the Youth Garden and working with this hydroponic garden that will be set up most likely in the boardroom here next to my office. So I might sneak in there and steal some of their spinach or something. We're just excited to see how this is going to work. This is just such a outside of library service type of thing. And then the last thing I want to mention, just so that it is on the radar with the commissioners, if you remember correctly, prior to the pandemic, we also suffered an indoor flood when the roof failed. About 25 to 30% of the library roof was replaced, but the remaining 70 to 75% will need replaced within the next probably 2 to 3 years. And I have been working with Sean and with Chris as well, looking at the capital facilities project line item in order to fund the replacement of the remaining 70 to 75% of the library roof. So unless there's any specific questions from anybody, I will stop talking about the library and let you guys get on with your agenda.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Trish? Oh, you
I just
did?
have
Okay,
one
I thought you
question.
Yes.
Does the wireless printing work with both Macs and PCs?
Yes, the wireless printing does work with Macs PCs. It works with all types of phones, laptops, tablets. It's been actually fantastic. It does occasionally require a driver to be installed onto the device. And so we do occasionally have to help people with that. But newer technology, so newer devices, it's really pretty seamless.
Wow, that's great. Thank you.
Yes, it sounds great, but sounds really good. Thank you, Carrie. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Gabriel.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. My family has made use, especially in the last year, of the kids cafe meals that are available for youth. And I was actually just curious, being a participant or user of that program, do you have any figures in terms of the usage of that program at the library, or?
Not off the top of my head. Right after the pandemic hit, kind of March of 2020, for about 6 months after that, the usage on Kids Cafe was triple what we had normally seen. It has since leveled down. I hesitate to even guess. I think that we're somewhere around 50 meals a week, but I can find out for sure and get that information to you.
Thanks so much. Thanks again for all you do.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Carrie. We will move to Land Use and Transportation Plan Public Engagement Meeting to be held November 10th. John.
Thank you, Mary, and good afternoon, commission members and staff. This is an information report. It's meant to identify a couple of things that are going on, which the commission should be familiar with. In land use transportation, or land use study contract is before the commission tonight. We'll go over that later. Transportation plan is underway. They will meet together in a forum on November the 10th in a planned public engagement session, which will have a series of tables set up in the Grand Center, where hopefully we can do all of this face-to-face without hybrid, because it's pretty hard to set that up properly. So in anticipation of that, we'll probably have about 9 tables set up. The transportation one will actually be a separate session that evening. We're hoping, Mary, that you could open it, and Chris as well. And we'll be there to help facilitate comments and feedback in a number of areas related to the general plan. So one of them will be land use, so the consultant will be there, if they're hired, of course. The transportation trails table will be there, talking about kind of the mini transportation master plan. Drainage potentially will be one of those issues, especially floodplain. And then Bill will be there with Maddie, we're hoping. We've got a brochure that's just about done, or a flyer, which will be sent out to all the participants. I think actually it was sent out today, so we'll be following up on that. We'll have a housing table. We're hoping that we can have a housing forum sometime in February or March to help fill in a lot of blanks in the general plan, and an economic development one in the spring too. Public safety is another table, so hopefully we can get EMS, fire, and the sheriff's office, and potentially emergency operations as part of that table. Each staff member is kind of helping to manage this. Infrastructure and water is another one. So we're working with groundwater and sewer and the Moab Area Partnership with Arnie. We're drafting a decision-making tree for water, because it seems to be a very complicated process. So hopefully we'll have that ready. And then we got an implementation table, which will actually have our County Commission draft strategic plan. The online platform will be showcased, and then plans, priorities, and other areas. And then we have a health and environment table too, and economic development. So there's a lot of tables there. Actually, Emory Telecom has volunteered, or has agreed, I should say, to participate in one of the tables too, with their rollout of their broadband, which is really exciting too, and that's happening as we speak. So that's it. Unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you, John. Yes, I have it on my calendar. Does anyone have any questions?
So what are the mechanics of gathering public comments at the various tables? How's that going to work?
So we're going to have, we'll have public comment sheets like and submissions that they can make. They can email us or they can make comments at the tables themselves and the people can just gather information. Our goal is to have each one of them kind of present their work plans and then get feedback on them. So some of that may be verbal, Kevin. So, but we're going to try to capture the text as best we can and then get comment sheets back from each participant too. So it's basically an open house with 5-minute, 10-minute short introduction and then people wandering around, much like a flea market would be. This has worked well in the past for me anyway.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? So I've been to some planning strategies similar to that through the Forest Service mostly. Okay, anything else? We are to the annual report on Housing Authority of Southeastern Utah. Ben.
Hi, Mary. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, we can.
Great. Thanks for having me. Glad to be back. Last year, when I was here, we were just finishing up the MAPS building and moving people in, and got a good report for this year too. And I feel like we have another project that's just wrapping up right now, and I'll get to that at Wingate Village. But I'll start with HASU's financials and our budget and things like that. Overall, HASU had a pretty good year this year. We've done a good job of maintaining our budget, staying within our budget parameters, but also funding our projects like Wingate Village and MAPS, and being able to use grants and help from the county with the CDBG at Wingate Village. We use a CDBG grant at MAPS. We've been able to use a few grants and turn those into loans in the project, which has been really helpful for us. We can use that money to pay HASU back over the long term to keep our organization going, and we can use that as unrestricted funds. So financially, HASU is still looking very strong. Yeah, so we've been able to loan almost $700,000 into our projects over the last year, which will pay us back with interest, which is good for our balance sheet moving forward and keeping unrestricted cash flow moving in. Our budget for 2022, we do have a decrease in revenue this year than we've kind of had some cash years in the last few years, but this year, myself and the board, I think we've decided to start reinvesting some of that money that we've gotten into both trying to hire new employees. I know I've heard a couple of times people trying to find new employees. HASU is no different. We're trying to find another person on staff to help me primarily do more development types. I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, but also we're looking at expanding our office and make it more ADA friendly and try to expand our offices and get more people in here. So Gabe, I was listening to your thing about the SULOG, or there's a revolving loan fund. So I got a note to maybe touch base with you and see if that's something that HASU can utilize. So that's a couple of things that, even though our budget doesn't show as much revenue, it's because we're finally to a place where we feel like we're starting to reinvest back into both of our more employees, but also to our office. So looking good there. Our Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program still holding strong. We continue to help about 50 to 55 families in Grand and San Juan County. Our application window is open still. We have instituted a preference system, so locals and that work and live in Grand County get bumped to the top of the list, in addition to some other things like disabled and victims of domestic violence get preference over people just moving to town for that program. So that's moving along pretty well. Our rent to own, we still have all occupied, as they tend to always be. But we do anticipate, I'll touch on this a little bit later, but we do anticipate another rent to own project at Arroyo Crossing this spring, probably 8 townhomes. So that's been very successful, and we're definitely trying to open up our development typology, especially with Arroyo Crossing. And I'll get to kind of talking about Arroyo Crossing here in a minute. Our Virginia apartments still plugging along. Not very much to report. We do have a few vacancies right now, but we tend to always have a really strong waiting list. As you'll see at MAPS, at Cinema Court, and all these places, the waiting lists are still really long, as you can expect for all of our affordable housing projects in Moab. Yeah, so touch on Cinema Court and MAPS. If you looked at my report, you can see that the waiting lists are 32 families on the 1-bedroom, 68 families on the 2-bedroom. So quite a bit of big long lists at both of those projects. We did see a significant decrease in the waiting list at Cinema Court for the 1-bedroom once MAPS opened. Because MAPS is primarily 1- and 2-bedroom, mostly 1-bedroom. So once Wingate Village is finished, it's almost finished here, we'll hopefully see a drop in waiting list numbers for those bigger size units. So again, we were really happy to build MAPS 1- and 2-bedroom units, but then also come around this year, be finishing up with Wingate Village, which are 3- and 4-bedroom units out in the valley. MAPS Senior Living still seems very successful, has a very healthy waiting list. It's always full, which is fortunate and unfortunate at the same time. So no one needs to be reminded that we need more, subsidized and unsubsidized and affordable housing. So yeah, we'll touch on that in just a second. Our mutual self-help program, still plugging away there as well. We just finished 11 homes out at Wingate. Wingate Village was a 33 unit in total, 22 multifamily units, 11 self-help family units. We finished the 11 self-help family units. Now we'll finish up the multifamily. We are hoping to close on the next 9 homes at Arroyo Crossing. I know that it's been a long and anticipated process. I know a lot of you are keen on and have been involved with Arroyo Crossing and have been involved with helping that out, and it's greatly appreciated. We are the first self-help grantee and self-help group, us and Community Rebuilds, to do self-help on community land trust land. So it's certainly been a learning experience for everyone. And after many, many months of continuing to work through that, I think we have a closing date set of November 3rd, so 2 weeks away. So as many of you have talked with Audrey and known that that process has been, quite a long one, but a lot of kinks and unexpected kinks we had to work out. But I think the silver lining with switching the self-help method onto Arroyo Crossing, and as many of you know, we'll be able to keep the self-help homes permanently affordable, which I know has been a topic of discussion in the past. You all know that Arroyo Crossing is meant to be a perpetually affordable and affordable development, and there'll be resale restrictions on both our self-help homes and CR's homes and everybody that sells and builds properties there. So once we get going in the next couple of weeks with self-help, we can hopefully think about the days of past where, self-help homes are perceived to have flipped for lots of money. And, of course that's happened, but not as rampant, I feel, as people make it out to be. But anyway, even self-help will become like a permanently affordable project, which is great news. And just kind of keeping going on Arroyo Crossing, we do have some future different types of projects that we're hoping to do. We're hoping to get with the land trust to do a multifamily project there, probably 30 some units, where I talked about the Crown, so some rental units, in addition to the self-help. And then also, this will take some more of my staff to help me out, try to figure this out, but we are trying to hope to work with the land trust and start new programs. I know that the essential worker housing situation is dire, and I know that's one thing that HACIA wants to focus on in the next year is how do we serve that 80 to 120% AMI subset of population. It is kind of hard at the Arroyo Crossing because the income limits, and it only goes up to 120%. And I know that they've had conversations with the hospital and the Park Service, and even some of those employees make too much. Even as a family, you have 2 working households, it's really quick to get above even that 120% AMI family size or family income limit. So we got some work cut out to do to try to figure out how to build probably a townhome structure where we can start building for not just that 80% AMI below self-help model that 50 and lower, that very, very low income model, which we've done at MAPS and Wingate Village, and try to go outside of what we've done in the past, which and go to that 80 to 120%. So that's what we're looking to do there in the next year or so. We're on the cusp of submitting a tax credit application for 32 units, and that kind of fell through the cracks right at the last moment. So we hear there's a spring round, so we're hoping to submit an application for a multifamily at Royal Crossing in the spring, and then as well in the fall if possible. So yeah, that's a lot of our future development we're looking to do. I did include some pictures in my packet. It shows Wingate Village from above and maps, some pretty professional pictures that were taken recently. So, and I also show in my packet, I have some elevation drawings of what our future self-help homes. There's just one of the two that we'll be building there. And so looking forward to a lot of development at Arroyo Crossing over the next year or two. And I think that's all I have, unless anybody has questions.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Ben, for your hard work.
Sorry, Mary, I had some questions.
Okay.
And I apologize. These are very basic questions. You didn't mention what your total budget is.
Our total budget for, I think it's off the top of my head, I think it's 800,000. It's somewhere between 800 and 900,000.
And then the revenue sources, is it entirely grants, or how does that break down?
Our biggest revenue source still is self-help. We get a grant every 2 years to operate the self-help program. That has always been HASU's biggest revenue source, but fortunately, but the problem with self-help is it's only for self-help. It's restricted funding just for self-help. But with these projects that we've been able to bring in and this money that we've loaned to these projects, those will come back to HASU as unrestricted funds. So I would say now our budget looks like more half and half, where we have half mutual self-help. We have some other programs that bring some cash, but mostly self-help, and then Cinema Court, MAPS, and Wingate Village will be the primary revenue sources from these CDBGs that we've got for MAPS. And we had another loan from previous projects to Wingate Village. Those will pay us back over time, and development fees that we get from the tax credit projects when we do that. So that's becoming more and more our revenue source, which is good for us because unrestricted funds, and we can use that however we want instead of just for self-help.
Okay. And you mentioned that you recently started restricting or putting on some restrictions for people who live and work locally. Does that mean you were getting applications from people who weren't locals previously, or?
Not so much necessarily. The Section 8 is certainly one of our smaller programs. I think that's what you're referencing, putting that preference system in. I think we don't get a ton, but we get 1 or 2 or 3 a year that see Moab on a map, just like other people that come to this town and say, if they have a voucher or if they want to move there, they'll call us up and get an application and sit on the waiting list in Miami before they move to, or wherever they are. But when we found out that we can, this is 2 years ago, when we found out we can institute a preference to, verify that they live and work in Grant County before and give them a preference, we put that in pretty quickly.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions?
Great work, Ben.
Thank
It seems like you guys are very busy.
We are. Thanks, Sarah.
They are very busy. It's been a lot of work this year. A lot of things. So thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
We are to report on Moab Museum. Forrest Rogers.
Good afternoon, Mary, and good afternoon, commissioners. And thank you for a few minutes of your time to learn a little bit more about that new museum across the street. We're a little jazzed today. That's not something you often hear museum directors say, but we've just finished installing a really extraordinary new exhibit. It's called Hopi Katsina, and the title is Evolving Styles, Enduring Messages. We've got upwards of 100 handmade Hopi Katsina made by more than 14 different carvers. That is on display now and will be running through the end of the end of February 2022. Those of you who have been in the new museum know that it's pretty bright with white walls and a lot of standout artifacts and objects, but these Katsina have brought so much color to the space. It's just remarkable. On Thursdays and Fridays this month, and then November and December, we're going to have Hopi carvers actually demonstrating their work in the building. And it's a great opportunity for folks in the community and our traveling visitors to learn more about the spiritual and cultural importance of Katsina. I spent some time as a youth on the Navajo Nation and am trying to train myself not to use the term Kachina, which I think is sort of the anglicized term or use of the term, but it's a great opportunity for you to see some really amazing artwork. I'd like to begin just by saying thank you to the county. I want to especially acknowledge former Commissioner Greg Halliday for his service as an ex officio member of our board, and for Jacques for being our current ex officio member. I also like to thank, belatedly, but nonetheless, genuinely thank the staff at the Grand Center who supported us when we were in temporary location there from September of 2018 through March of 2019. I realize that's a while ago, but when we started the renovation of our building, we had to find a home for 4 or 5 people to work out of an office. And the county and the staff at the Grand Center were very gracious in allowing us to be there. I also want to acknowledge especially Sean Fugit and the staff of the facilities and maintenance crew who have been wonderfully attentive to the challenges of our 36-year-old building, especially as we've gone through some major renovations of it. It's been a really important part of our ability to change the look and feel and the experience of visitors in the building. For those of you who don't know, the museum and the county actually were partnered for many years until 2008, when by mutual agreement, they signed the board of the museum and the county signed a memorandum of understanding, which essentially outsourced the management and governance of the museum to the not-for-profit board that had been established in 1958. So that agreement stands, and it resulted in a long-term lease of the building to the county, for the county, and the county's commitment to continue funding the museum as if it were still a department of the county. As such, we not only maintain collections of private individuals, but we also maintain a lot of county records, especially those of the community of the Historic Preservation Commission. We do have a lot going on. I think all of you have received a copy of our 3-year report, which summarized all the changes that have occurred and the steps we've taken since 2018. We've been closed for 34 months, but we opened in June of this year. And I'm pleased to report that attendance for the first 4 months has exceeded the attendance in the first 8 months of 2018. And equally importantly, so has the revenue. Admissions revenue has exceeded what we had projected. We really intend to look at this new exhibit experience as a fresh start for the museum and look to the future to build the museum in new and different ways. This new exhibit experience includes multiple stories upon multiple stories about the human experience in this region. We have an exhibit that is small in space, but deep in terms of the stories it tells. And so during the pandemic, we spent a lot of staff time moving a lot of our stories onto our website, delivering stories virtually and digitally through our Tuesdays with the Museum program through Zoom and Facebook Live. This is a step that many museums have moved into, and we intend to continue and expand on those. We've been fortunate to receive some grant support, mostly from state agencies, but also some from individuals to do things like start the process of digitizing the Fran Barnes collection. We are also beginning to digitize, transcribe, and edit 29 to 30 of our oral histories, which are about a third of the total number of oral histories that the museum has been collecting since the late 1980s, and represent an incredible record of the perspectives of people who have lived in Moab for generations. We've also spent quite a bit of time during the last 6 months partnering with other organizations in the community. And our staff has developed programs for the public library. We developed a dinosaur kit for the library's summer programs. We've led camps and programs for CFI and the Multicultural Center, in addition to running our Get Out and Go history programs for students at HMK. So a lot of the work that we do is really to help build in this community a relationship to the museum and an understanding that there is a deep history here, regardless of how long anybody has lived in Moab or in Grand County, that there's a deep history and there's always more to learn about it. I'll finish with 2 things. First of all, we've made a great effort over the last 3 years to really upscale the quality of collections care. That is to say, the quality of the objects that we hold in trust. We've taken time to include a lot of conservation work on objects that are so important to the community. I'm specifically referring to the John Urbanek map. That is an iconic and remarkable piece of artwork, which has been conserved. Each of the 20 pieces separated and conserved by a professional conservator. And the Hidden Valley Load Basket, which people in Moab feel a great sense of ownership for and investment in, is currently at a conservator, and we expect it to return to the museum, if not in November, probably in late January. And we intend to have an appropriate blessing and return celebration for the basket. We're really excited about that. I will mention that we're also working now to rebuild our membership base since closing in 2018. We're down about 30% in the number of members that we have on our rolls, and we consider them part of the museum family. We want to get them back in the family. So we'll start a membership campaign as we come to the end of 2021, and then work on that to build a donor base for the future. Our next most important priority is to raise money to build an appropriately archival display case for the Urbanek map. Something of that nature will cost between $18,000 and $20,000. But we think it is such an important piece of art. People who knew John Urbanek called it his love letter to Moab. And it's something that we want to take care of as we do with all of our other objects. The museum has a budget of approximately $350,000. And as you might imagine, the vast majority of that is taken up in salaries for professional staff, but also in terms of the care of the collection. We have to count our collection storage space for the 15,000 objects that we have in storage. We have to count that space in terms of cubic feet rather than square feet, because these objects are big, small, and unusual sizes in most cases. And so that's something that we're working on as we move forward to make sure that people in the community know that this is a community museum that wants to be an important resource for people who have lived here for generations, or people who have just moved here and want to learn more about the place they've come to call home. I apologize, I've spoken rapidly because I wanted to be respectful of your agenda. So I will stop there and ask if there are any questions.
Are there any questions?
Just a comment. Yeah, thank you, Forrest and Tara and Mary and everybody else at the museum. The museum looks fantastic if you haven't seen it. And I've been lucky enough to see the Katsina collection in Tom Moreau's home, or most of it, and it's awesome. Highly recommend checking that out. Thanks, Forrest.
Thank you.
And I would like to acknowledge Forrest for his help with getting Utah Raptor State Park. He was instrumental in letting the legislators understand the historic value of the internment camp and the CCC camp. So thank you very much, Forrest.
Glad to be a
Any
help.
other? Any other? Thank you very much. We are now moving to the report on the removal from the UMTRA site of 12 millionth ton of uranium waste. Russell McAllister.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, and thank the commission for allowing me to visually acknowledge the huge milestone that was met last Thursday. We did move 12 million tons. It's been a long process over 9 years, but we're happy to celebrate the 12 million ton the milestone. This is important. This year, this fiscal year, we moved 1 million tons in 12 months, and that's been the most that the project has moved since 2012, when Recovery Act money was running 2 shifts. So that's a huge accomplishment for the crew out here and everybody involved. And we appreciate Mary and the steering committee and some of the commissioners that help us lobby for funding. It's been important for us as well. We have a video presentation. I wanted to have the meeting in person out there like we did 2 years back, but unfortunately the COVID pandemic has still prevented those kinds of meetings in large attendance. So we did prepare a video release. Mary McGann was key in getting Mitt Romney and Commissioner John Curtis to acknowledge the milestone that we met, so appreciate that. And then we've got some project people as well as senior leadership from the DOE. So that'll go out this Thursday, 10/21. So we'll send that out to everybody. It's a pretty big accomplishment, so appreciate everybody's hard work on that. And we did that safely. We had another huge milestone. We worked 1,800 days without a lost time injury. So not only has the project done successful in moving the material, they've done it safely, and that includes COVID. Luckily, and with folks' participation in a lot of the CDC guidance, we were able to do that without any COVID transmission on the project. We did have some folks test positive, but most of that was from family, and we certainly didn't have any, and we didn't have any deaths or serious injuries, either as a result of COVID or as a result of the project. What we've done in the past, and it probably has a little bit less significance here, but we have a little placard at both here at the project and the commission, and we have a little representation. You can't see it very well here, but it represents 1 million tons of material moved. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to transfer this to Mary, so she's going to grab it and then take it over.
So here is our the plaque. This is a representation of the cell in Crescent Junction. And when we started, this was all blue. And each time we hit 1 million tons, we add to it. So I'm going to add another one. So this is pretty exciting. This is getting very close, very, very close. This is what the pile looks like now. So that is a nice demonstration. We only have 1, 2, 3, 4 more million tons to go. Sounds like a lot, 1 million tons, but Russell is hoping that we can even move more than 1 million next year. So it looks like we are on track to have most of the tailings moved by the end of 2025. So we're very happy. And Russell's done an amazing job. And I want to introduce Jessica Thacker. She has replaced Russ Von Kolk as our liaison. So would you introduce yourself, Jessica?
Hi everyone. I'm Jessica Thacker. I'm your new UMTRA liaison and technical inspector. I took over for Russ back in May, and I'm still learning everything that I'm supposed to be doing, but it's proven to be incredibly exciting and informative, and it plays to my background. I'm a geologist by trade. I do actually work full-time for Canyonland Solid Waste, so I wear many hats. I'm just happy to be working with everybody with Grand County, and then working with Russell over at the DOE and the UMTRA project. I plan to be here as long as you guys will have me, and yeah, I look forward to this project moving forward.
We're looking forward to meeting you in person, having you when we can finally get back together in person. So thank you, Jessica. And thank you, Russell. Russell has done an amazing job. An amazing job. I've seen previous directors, and his work has been exceptional. So thank you. And thank you, Jessica. Questions? We'll have a big celebration when we finally get out of COVID. So thank you. We are now on, where did I put my agenda? We are now to the presentation on National Park Service timed entry pilot program at Arches National Park. Marco Dillon, would you take over and introduce the staff that's with you and let us know how things are going? Thank you.
So Mary, this is Patty, and so I'm going to start. And yes, it's exactly what we're here for, is to engage and collaborate with the community and the county on a pilot timed entry system. So Marco De Leon is from the regional office and is here and has been engaged a long time. And so we want to, he's the lead of communications for the regional office and speaks for the regional director. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Marco.
Thanks, Patty. And thank you so much, commissioners, for fitting us into a very busy agenda. I guess I just wanted to share a little bit about what we have going on. This is a long ongoing effort. And so this is sort of a quick update to get folks caught up on what's cooking, I guess. And I think before I hop into sort of the timed entry pilot, first I want to flag that 2 years ago, we started a number of data gathering efforts. I think the one I want to share with all of you today and folks watching this sort of later on is a visitor use study that we completed in 2019. And what the visitor use study was looking at was how are our visitors at Arches interacting with the park? When do they come? What are they expecting to see? And how crowded do they think is too crowded, right? And so for the first one, and again here, I don't think this is going to be a surprise to folks from the commission who obviously live and work here and sort of know sort of when times are heavy. But I think the big takeaways from that visitor use study that feed into this pilot timed entry program that I want to flag are, one, that people are coming to the park between the times of 6 and 6. So really sort of a day use park at this point is what we were finding in 2019. Folks are certainly lining up earlier than 6 o'clock, but we find a peak sort of early in the morning, sort of 6 to 8. It dips off a little bit around lunchtime and then picks back up and plateaus at a very high level up until about 6 when things start to taper off. So that's one, sort of a day use park. 6 to 6 is sort of the bulk of when folks are coming. What are they hoping to see? Our visitors, we find a visit to Arches is very synonymous with visiting 3 locations in the park. And again, probably nothing super blockbuster to folks who live in the community, but those 3 are the Devil's Garden, Windows, and Delicate Arch. And so in many folks' minds, when they're putting on their bucket list, I want to go to Arches, they're thinking about those 3 locations. And finally, and most interestingly, we were trying to get at the concept of how crowded is too crowded for the average visitor. And to do this, we created a metric called people at one time, right? And we showed visitors a series of photographs that were manipulated to show different crowd sizes. And we were asking visitors and respondents, basically, at what point should the National Park Service intervene? And should something be done about the crowding that is being experienced in the photograph you're seeing? And then how crowded is so crowded that it really kind of puts you off and you think you wouldn't want to visit, right? And what we found was in some of those peak times, again, early morning, late afternoon, in those peak locations, again, the 3 that I mentioned, Delicate Arch, Devil's Garden, and Windows, that we were exceeding that threshold that was established by averaging folks' responses to those crowded photographs. And so what this shows us is that in theory, the visitor experience is being diminished in some sense for the average visitor. And again, very theoretical in nature. I think you can, and we certainly have, engaged in discussions about the subjectivity of crowded, how you measure it. But what we found through this visitor use study was that there's at least theoretical evidence for the average visitor that at certain times, in certain seasons, the experience at the park is diminished. And that led us to start thinking about how do we test some of the theories from the data we've gathered, and what we thought about, what we presented to the community here in Moab was a timed entry pilot program. We had a public comment period just last month. It just closed. And I guess I'm here to report, just sort of in brief, I think it's fair to say that by and large, there's been a significant amount of support for a timed entry pilot at Arches. And we certainly know that we haven't reached out to everyone yet. And so as you all hear from your constituencies and folks at home who are watching this on YouTube, and you may have some concerns, please feel free to send those our way to Arches National Park. And we're certainly still willing to consider any concerns you may have. In fact, as we think about implementing a timed entry pilot, those concerns that are raised from the public are going to be super helpful in how we implement that timed entry pilot. And so that's sort of the data we've gathered, why we think a timed entry pilot is necessary. Next, I want to talk a little bit about in theory around just really flagging that not all timed entry systems are created alike, right? They're really made to order. They're bespoke things that are being created in areas across the country. And there's certainly a great amount of flexibility that is available to the National Park Service, to Patty Trapp here at Arches, and to all of you as community members, community leaders, in how we implement that timed entry system. So some of the things, I want to say is just, we're not talking about reserving every hour of every day of the year. This is really trying to get targeted at those times where we're diminishing the visitor experience. And so some of the ideas that are being considered right now is sort of, what is the season of that timed entry pilot if we were to go in that direction? What are the hours that you would be required to get a reservation? How many reservations do you release? And I'm sorry, how long before an arrival? How much time do you provide visitors to make their reservations? So I'm thinking, 30 days, 90 days, 120 days. So folks can plan. And then similarly, do you release all of your reservations at once, or do you reserve some sort of like a 48-hour window, 24-hour window in advance, right? And so some of the things we're kicking around, and we certainly look forward to hearing from all of you and from folks in Grand County, is what makes sense from the data we gathered from the visitor use study is right now we're considering what a 6 to 6 p.m. for the months of April to October may look like. So this is, again, requiring reservations from 6 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. in the evening from, again, April to October, which we see as sort of peak season over the course of a year. And then also, we want to make those reservations available as soon as possible. Arches is really a world-class destination, and we know that we have visitors from all over the globe. And so providing more time for folks to plan, we think is better. Again, that's open to discussion and conversations with our local leaders. But I think where we're at now is, again, more time is better. So 120 days to release some portion of those reservations is probably better than making it a more narrow window. And then finally, from the conversations we've had with all of you, with other stakeholders, we're finding that there is a lot of value in retaining some of those reservations for a 24-hour before. So that if I'm a visitor coming to a hotel in Moab and I didn't really plan, I'm from Denver and I took my family on a road trip for the weekend. If I arrive at check-in at 3 o'clock at my hotel, they can inform me that, oh, actually you need a reservation system. You're actually coming during this pilot program. But at 5 o'clock, they release X% of their reservations for the next day. So I, as sort of someone who didn't plan, lived nearby, was on a road trip, still have the opportunity to compete for a reservation. And then certainly, if I can't make it and I don't get my ticket, certainly there's a sunset, great sunset views, et cetera, sort of right after 6 p.m. So anything else just on sketching out what that implementation might look like, Patty, that I may have missed that you wanted to flag?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. And the key thing is, though, is how do we engage the community to make sure the hotels, the restaurants, we know there's people that are already booking now for that time period. So we want to make sure we work with people to have really good communication out to those people at how to get their reservations and when to get the reservations, and just overall discuss how things would happen.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that kind of circles us back to where we started at the beginning, which is we know if we're going to be successful in this at all, it's going to require collaboration. It's going to require all of us working together. And certainly as we think about implementation, this is a system, because it's a pilot, it can be tweaked on the fly as we learn more. And we're looking for ways that we can keep this conversation up in a more formal setting where we're not adding to your already lengthy agenda, but where we bring folks in and really work through some of the details on implementation and how we tweak it as, you know, if and as we put forward a pilot. We certainly look forward to improving that and having some sort of action group that may be able to speak through some of the data we're seeing, make tweaks to the program is certainly sort of next steps we're thinking about is how do we more formally engage in that collaborative process. So with that, we want to be respectful of your time. Thank you again so much for having us. Are there any questions that we might answer before we sign off?
Questions?
I've got one.
Yes.
One concern I've heard is the challenges associated with the online portal potentially, and those sorts of systems, those sorts of reservation systems becoming overloaded and becoming really frustrating or unmanageable for potential park users. And can you just speak a little bit to your efforts and process to creating a really sound system that can handle loads of traffic and avoid avoids a lot of the frustration and a worst case scenario, even failure when folks are trying to get to the park?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question, Commissioner. I think the big takeaway is another benefit of we here in Moab, right? We here in Grand County is that we won't be first movers on this timed entry pilot. I think you're absolutely right that there have been some kinks in other parks that have rolled out timed entry pilots over the past couple of years. But I guess what I'm saying now is our plan was to start this process early with recreation.gov. They've learned a lot from the series of pilots that have been instituted across the service. They're sort of our lone contractor provider for these sorts of systems. And so I think they're learning a ton over the last 2 years, and we don't anticipate any sort of breakdown given the learning process that they've had for the past couple of years. But certainly something that we want to hear, this is part of the collaborative process, right? If there's parts of the user experience that you're hearing folks are really dissatisfied with, we certainly want to hear that, and we'll work very closely with rec.gov to ensure that it's a smooth process. And I think part of this also is there's this huge educational component that we're going to need that we have our work cut out for us on, where we want to make sure that folks aren't scared of a system that's overly complicated. So we're thinking about ways that we can help educate the public, that we can push out on local media sites that sort of walk through step by step, sort of making it as simple as possible about how you acquire one of these reservations. So that's something on our mind as well as we move forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. So in a previous conversation, you mentioned that the pilot program was going to have a limited time frame, and then you're going to evaluate. And the problem came up that it might be less confusing to people that if the program's running well, it just continues rather than having the reservation, the timed entry system being on again, off again in a kind of unpredictable way. So what's the current plan?
The current plan is from April to October. And again, if we do that 120-day window sort of beforehand, that would mean that folks could theoretically start getting reservations as early as January in the new year. So even while we're targeting a pilot that starts in April, really folks would be signing up again 120 days before that. And
some of the folks.
Right, some of the folks. And to the point of if it's working well, I think that's really what this is all about. It's an experiment, right? We want to gather data. We want to improve the pilot. If it's working really well and the community is really supportive of it and things work out the way our theoretical models are pointing us to, I think that's fantastic. What I will say is Rocky Mountain National Park out in Colorado went through this process last year, and they learned a lot as well. And so they rolled out the pilot again this year, bringing some of that learning, some of that data gathering that they learned in 2020 and improve the system. So they were able to bring more people into the system. They were able to manage no-shows in a much better way. They sort of zoned the park into different zones to make reservations less necessary in certain areas while making them a little more constricted in others. So to the point of if it's working well, that's certainly our hope. We hope that it works well, but I think we also hope that we learn a great deal of information and make the system smarter as we move forward. So if it's a complete bust and it doesn't work for Moab, again, it's great that we get that information and we'll see how we move forward from the data we gather. So either way, I think it's about learning, and if it's too painful, we can walk away. If it's something that's super successful, I think we can only tweak it and make it stronger and get more folks on board.
And I would just add that I don't think right now our numbers show that we may not have to do, let's say we decide this is a good thing after the pilot. I don't see us doing it year round. Now it may distribute, I don't know what's going to happen. It may distribute visitors, but I think there's certain times a year that we wouldn't have to do it.
Thanks.
Hi.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I was
Yes,
curious
John?
as to why you chose April 1st instead of March 1st, for example. March tends to be extremely busy here with the spring break crowd.
Yeah, great question. And I just preface this by saying I don't think anything's been chosen yet. And so if that's on the implementation side, again, I think we're certainly open to a different date range. That's just sort of for something for folks to respond to, I think is where we're at now. Patty, did you want to flag anything else?
I think that there's been a lot of discussion of when we start it, but we don't want to rush into this. Okay, we want to work with the community and collaborate with the community and really be thoughtful in what we're going to do. So I think that was part of it, but I can go ahead and next time the team gets together and meet, and I can talk about a potential March date. It'll just kind of collapse things.
Yeah, I think Jacques right that if you're hoping that hoteliers and restaurateurs can help spread the word, the sooner that they're familiar with the system, the sooner they'll be able to help out with that. If it's kind of mid-season that something's starting, visitors will already be here and people on the ground won't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, great point. Thank you for that feedback.
Thanks.
Have you met with Austin, our new travel council?
August,
Yeah.
yes. We
Yeah.
actually met with him this morning.
Yeah, and I
Okay,
met with
good.
them earlier too. So
Okay, good, because that will be an excellent way to get out the information.
Totally agree. And what a wealth of information. I just want to plug, August, if you're watching, thank you so much for all that you're doing and for all the information you shared. We certainly look forward to working with you.
it's really great ideas that will help us communicate, with the community and the public.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I will be keeping in touch to find out how we can help with community outreach. The county will be willing to help as much as possible.
Sounds
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you so much again
Thank
for your
you.
time.
We are now to general business action items, discussions and considerations of approving update description of Grand Center Director, Renee Baker.
Good afternoon. So for the Grand Center Director position, Verlene has given us a retirement date of the end of the year. She served for the Grand Center and in Grand County for the last 31 years. So we're so excited to have her expertise and excited to move on to retirement. But this position cannot be funded through TRCC. So they just need some updated information on the cultural programs and the kind of community programming side of the Grand Center. I think some of that programming they are already offering, and this is just upping that a little bit. The focus is still the seniors and the senior programming there, and of course, all the seniors that are at the Grand Center. So, and then we'd just like to get this position out for recruitment so that we can get somebody in and Verlene can get a chance to have some overlap with the new director.
Thank you. Was there anything you wanted to point out as far as changes specifically, or does anyone have any questions?
I don't
No?
think I have anything I wanted to point out, Mary. The Grand Center is set up, it can be used as a conference center and also additional recreational kind of community classes and things like that. So I just wanted to point out that that was included in the job description.
Okay, thank you. I'd entertain a motion. Kevin?
Make a motion. I move to approve the updated Grand Center Director job description and authorize recruitment and hiring effective October 20th, 2021.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I have a second? Seconded by Jacques. Discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Raise your hand or say aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Renee. Now we are to approving the health insurance renewal increase for 2022. I believe Renee will be talking, and Chris, were you going to be part of this presentation?
Oh, I'll probably chime in, but I think Renee will be able to cover most of it.
Okay, Renee?
Absolutely. So I hope you can see my screen here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I apologize. I do have a upset toddler in the background, so I will mute myself when I'm available. So for the health insurance renewal this year, I'm going to give a little bit of background of what happened, what the process we went through, and why you're seeing some different numbers. Also, that we got an updated packet just yesterday from our GBS, our benefits brokers. I'm so sorry, 1 second.
Because while we're waiting for Renee, I had a basic confusion about the information in the packet. There are these sections A, B, and C of the motion. Are those alternatives, or are those like 3 different insurance programs that we're going to be considering?
Let me look at it real quick. Looking at the latest packet that Renee sent out.
I'm so sorry, Kevin.
They're all separate options, Kevin. So these would be different plans that we can approve, and some of the plans have options within themselves. You know, just actually, it's in the agenda summary also, but when we first got our renewal proposal from Cigna, we were only able to negotiate down to about 13%. And so in discussion with GBS, we decided to go out to bid, which was a good idea. Obviously, looking at the returns that we got on those bids. And so, let's see, did Renee make it back or no? But yeah, these are different options. Renee has changed her suggested alternative, mostly in relation to the original United Healthcare offering, not including University of Utah Hospital. And we requested information from our broker on the number of employees that actually filed claims with the University of Utah Hospital this year. And it's, I believe it was 29 employees, which is quite a few. And so it's heavily used and recruited, that particular healthcare provider. Let's see, I'm just trying to get caught up on...
I'm back, Chris.
Okay, go ahead.
So sorry about all of that. Just a little bit of background. Cigna did first present us with the 12.99% annual increase, and with that having an increase, we instructed GBS to take it out to bid. We did receive the 10 quotes that you see in the packet there from the providers, and Cigna gave us an updated quote of the 6.98%. So I did kind of pull out the quotes that I felt were most similar in plan design as well as network for our employees and kind of minimize that disruption there. And you'll also see in the numbers that I provided that I included some vacant but budgeted positions in 2021. So we can just kind of get a better idea of kind of what that would look like as a total increase in 2022. So that's assuming that all of these positions would be filled at the beginning of the year. And kind of just shows that middle of the road insurance option to get that. And then you'll also notice that there's no mention of our life insurance policy or long-term disability policy. We actually received a 0% increase on those. So we would just like to stay with our current carrier of Lincoln Financial. And then historically, we just add the percentage of the increase to the employee paid premiums, which are generally on the traditional plan, which is a lower deductible type plan. So I do have some stats here. We can kind of come back to those because I wanted to get into the 3 options that I felt were most viable for our employees. So United Healthcare came back, and they actually came back with the lowest, not the lowest, but the best of the 3 kind of options that we had there. And I keep going back and forth on this one because of the network options. So we can offer our employees that U of U coverage. And we dug into that a little bit more and found that about 7% of our total plan is actually utilizing the U of U network of hospitals, which is, it seems low, 7%, but it is a 4-network hospital. It's about 4 hours away, and they do have some great specialty doctors up there. So we want to make sure that we still give that as an option. So United Healthcare, and this is what kind of changed in the last minute there, gave us the option to also offer the an additional plan. I'll call it kind of like a buy-up option for our employees, where they could buy into that U of U coverage plan. And then also by bundling services with United Healthcare, we do see a decrease on the medical premium of 2.5%. So that increase is included in the amounts I'll show you here in just a moment. Of course, changing plans, there's going to be some disruption to our employees. I think this one would be overall minimal. There's an additional program called Motion through United, provided through United, and they would pay additional funds into employees' HSA accounts, those who decided to go on the high deductible plan for doing kind of wellness challenges, I'll call it. They would wear a tracker and submit steps and things like that. Cigna, our plan design would stay exactly the same. Our network would stay the same. And that's where I kept kind of going back and forth and why I changed my recommendation. The increase of the 6.98% is not something we've seen without a plan design change, or we thought we were going to get from Cigna. So that's a good indication that they wanted to keep our business, but also keep our plan the same. And then PEHP is another one that I felt was probably the last most viable change in the employees network. The plan design remains the same. They're not a national provider, but they do provide services within Utah, Idaho, and Colorado. So those who are extending into Grand Junction for care would still probably be covered. And there's no vision or dental coverage through PEHP, so it would have to remain on either. We can choose a new plan, or we can remain on Cigna for vision and dental there. Absolutely get into some of the numbers here as we kind of go through some of the things. Like I said, I've kind of gone back and forth on my recommendation, and that's only because we are established with Cigna and with the U of U, looking at that utilization of the U of U, I don't want to make that choice go away from our employees. So if we do choose the United at a lower premium, at a lower renewal rate, that is an option that our employees can still have. I just think that having 4 plans for our employees to choose from is a little bit bulky, and I don't want to also take away the U of U option from somebody who maybe didn't need it at the beginning of the year, but then needed to be referred over there to a specialist or something like that. So maybe they wouldn't have selected it on United Healthcare and then moved into to needing it later on in the year and they can't get that coverage back for the year. I'll dig into some of the costs here. So if we do choose United, you'll see my note off to the side here from our brokers that it would be recommended to not replace the entire plan with the options PPO, meaning that employees would need to select that they would want that additional coverage and pay a slightly higher premium on it, and run 4 plans instead of the normal 2 that we offer. If bundling, so this 1.77% does include the bundled cost of the bundle discount of 2.5% from the medical, if bundling the dental and vision through United Healthcare. If at all possible, I think it just minimizes disruption to remain with one carrier for all options. And you'll see here in the light red that if bundling, it would be an increase of 152,000 kind of estimated there with those additional budgeted positions for 2021 added in. This next orange section is also the United Healthcare. This would be the buy-up option for employees to have to select that coverage. It came in at 5.83%. Now, this is where I also had a hard time because it was hard. We don't know who would select what coverage quite yet if we offered all 4 plans. So I did just calculate this one as a total 5.83%. And that comes back at being about 260,000 of an increase. Cigna came at that 6.98%. So that one is an increase of 353,000. And then PEHP came back at 3.86%. And that came back to an employer increase of about 287,000. I would like to maybe talk through some of these options and then I can dig into some of the employees kind of disruptions or plans there as well.
Okay, thank you.
I gave you a lot of info.
Does anyone have any questions at this point?
So I didn't, so what's your current recommendation?
My current recommendation would be, I think, kind of just keep it simple this year and remain with Cigna. We know how the network works. Our employees know how the plan works. They know what claims are going to get covered, and we don't lose any of that kind of uncertainty of needing that additional network of the U of U.
Chair?
Yes.
I would go ahead and make a motion. I move to approve the Grand County Medical Insurance renewal with Cigna at the increase of 6.98% and retain the bundle of vision and dental services with Cigna. I also move to approve an increase of 6.98% applied to the employee paid premiums for 2022 Cigna Healthcare Traditional Medical Insurance Plan. Monthly cost to the employee of $125.95 for single, $160.76 for two-party, and $310.63 for family, with an overall fiscal impact of an increase of $353,784.86 for 2022, for a total plan cost of $3,049,484.90.
Thank you, Gabriel. Do I have a second? I can't see everybody.
I'll second that, Jacques.
Okay, so motion by Gabriel and seconded by Jacques to have choice B. Discussion.
Yeah, and I just say, to follow up with the motion, I just feel like it's really critical that we, continue to support our existing employees, with this maneuver, and also, just stay competitive in recruitment and retention as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Renee, I just had a quick question. How much would it cost the county if we went with United and they purchased the buy-up for University of Utah?
So that's this option here, Chris, the 5.83%. I did this one as a total of everybody being on that plan, but of course we don't know who or what. So it would likely be less than this increase of 260,000, but that'd be offering 4 plans as well.
Okay, so it's what you're showing then is doing the University of Utah option for everybody.
Correct.
And then, okay.
And what's the difference between the bundling and not bundling? I missed that.
United came back with that option if we chose not to bundle and take a different dental provider
Okay,
or
so
vision
bundling
provider.
with the dental is what you're talking.
Yep,
Got it.
they offer a
Thanks.
discount on the medical.
Got it. So if I'm understanding your numbers correctly, then, so there's various different United options, but one of the more likely ones would save about $100,000 compared to the Cigna option. So that's less than $100,000 per, less than
about
$100,000 per employee.
Sorry,
right?
The United number we're comparing here is kind of worst case scenario if every single employee bought in at the premium plan.
That's correct.
So is there?
And United's the one that was offering 4 different choices for employees.
Yep, that's right, Evan. So they are offering, it was suggested that we would offer all 4 of the United plans alongside each other so that employees could choose to buy up into the United Healthcare, into the U of U coverage plan.
And what's the cost for employees to buy into that plan?
I mean, part of the issue is, and maybe going back to the question I asked, Renee, do you know how much it costs the county per employee if they opt into that plan?
Sure. So I've broken that out here on the employee costs. And I didn't do it as a total, so I apologize. I can do some quick math here. But if we were going to the United plan, and I did put a premium cost on the on the high deductible plan, which we generally cover, because we would be offering all 4 plans. So our lowest cost plan on the high deductible would be the cheaper increase. This would be the cost of the plan here, contribution per month, Chris. I can do some.
Okay, so I'm trying to see the totals or what, get an idea of how much more. I guess it depends a little bit on what plan they're on, what the increase.
So I'll point out here.
I'm just trying to say, if we had an average and we said, all right, all 29 employees that are using University opted in, how much would it cost the county? I mean, a big part of the problem is, we generally only increase the premiums by the percentage that's relative to their existing premium, and we don't typically pass the full cost on. So if we're talking, like $4,000 a year or something like that, $4,000 or $5,000 a year. The employee, typically the way we've done it in the past, they would only pay, the percentage increase to the plan relative to their existing premium. So only a tiny fraction gets subsidized by the employee, and the county will pick up the vast majority of the increase. But I'm just trying to see what sort of I don't think all the employees would opt to do that. Although
Sure.
the HSA employees might, and then we would have to have some reconciliation on that end of things. Because they're not paying a premium to begin with.
And I worked that reconciliation into this plan. So if you look in the orange here, Chris, and everybody, you'll notice that the top two plans are kind of structured the same as the Cigna plans are now, where the employee on the traditional plan would be paying that premium cost, which is the $119 for the single, $152.94 for the two-party, and then $295. And then the lowest offering, the high deductible plan, would be the HSA, and then that would be at zero cost to the employee. The county picks up that contribution. And then into that buy-up plan, so being able to have that U of U coverage would move to the options PPO. On the traditional, you'll see that that increases slightly more. And then added just a slight increase of 5.83% of the total premium cost is added to the high deductible for those employees who would choose to buy up into that increased coverage.
But I guess, I guess my question is, if you're in the high deductible plan and you buy up, what does it cost you?
That's what I have calculated here. So let's say you're on a family plan, you chose to buy up, it would cost you $56.16 a pay period to have that coverage, but still be on the high deductible plan.
I see. So you're doing both the HSA contribution and charging the employee.
Yep. Sorry, this GC HSA contribution is a Grand County provided contribution.
Okay, I see now. I was thinking that we would just deduct the employee cost out of the HSA contribution. It doesn't really matter, though, how we would do it. But I guess my point is kind of revolving around Evan's point, which is that, probably not all employees would opt into the USU or University of Utah option. And so our savings would probably be even greater than what's displayed.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, I just sort of want to reiterate that I'm forecasting, that the salary adjustments and a lot of the other capital needs and everything we have, we're gonna be, pushing the limits of our resources to get caught up with inflation and local market conditions, and then on top of that, be able to afford quite a lot of pretty expensive capital expenses, roofs, HVAC systems, etc. And 150, 90 to 150,000, could help. I don't know if it's worth the disruption or not, but
and overall, I don't.
A significant amount of money, though.
It is. Yep, and it would definitely. I think it would just take a little bit more messaging on this end if we do push out 4 plans on the United Healthcare plan to the employees, and understanding that there'll be a little bit of disruption at the beginning of the year. We can still have any claims that were covered under Cigna in 2021 and figure out any billing issues within that, and then move them over to the plan as well if we chose to go with United.
I'd like to weigh in for employees. Our current insurance is really good. Our employees are really grateful for it. It is not a system that is broken. Because of COVID, insurance as an industry has increased about 20 to 30% across the board for homeowners insurance. Various different random insurances like malpractice, that kind of stuff, health insurance as well. So I think that the percentage increase we're seeing from Cigna, and I think it's great these guys got Cigna to go down, is actually below what you're seeing across the industry. What we just talked about is that to get the same plan is going to cost employees on the high deductible about $1,300 more per year. And that is significant for our employees. I get it that we're undergoing a salary survey, but we're not looking at that right now. And the benefits are all we have. Our pay is so low. We are not keeping up with anyone. We're not even keeping up with restaurants. And so to now take a really good benefit away, it's like the only thing, the only chip some of us have in trying to recruit employees. So it's not a broken system. I think the percentage is both historically consistent with what we've seen, but also lower, if anything, with COVID increases we're seeing. And I'd like to see the commission vote to extend what we have now.
Any other discussion? Questions?
Mary, this is Chris Kaufman.
Yes, Chris.
I just had a quick question for Renee. Is the discount we get for bundling the dental and vision in with United a one-time discount, or would that carry over every year?
The 2.5% would carry over every year. They've given us this small, they call it an implementation discount of $2,700 for the total plan for just this one-time credit. But other than that, the 2.5% would be continued year to year.
Thank you.
So Renee, I guess I'm kind of confused because it looks like on these spreadsheets that actually there would be a cost decrease for the employee if we go with United while also retaining those U of U hospitals and a similar deductible. Am I wrong in understanding that?
Sarah, I don't think you're wrong. They came back with some updated numbers last night, and so that's what I've plugged in. Let me go back down to the employee costs.
Are we talking two different plans? There's folks on the traditional plan and folks on the high deductible plan.
There is. And it's just a small increase going into the United Healthcare plan for the employee costs. So it would go from 117 as it is currently to 119 on the single plan. And then if they chose that buy-up option, it would go to 124. And then employees who are on the high deductible who chose that buy-up option would see a cost for the first time. They're $39.41.
And a lot of these, the county pays a portion of the premium increases for the plans that employees choose.
Well, the vast majority of it. So, you know, if the premium goes up 5.83%, the employee's contribution, you know, goes up only 5.83% relative to what it was before. So I don't know if we've got, let's see, so the total premium, and you can see the employer contribution versus the total premium, you know, is substantial. I mean, we could take any of these and do the math real quick to see what the proportion is, but the county carries the vast majority of premium increases.
I would say the county carries between 80 and probably 85% of the premium cost there. And the employee would pick up about 15, it averages about 15 to 20% kind of on all of these plans.
So Renee, I mean, these numbers have been going by pretty fast, so maybe I'm wrong, but I trying to look at the, you know, the county savings per employee under one of these options and comparing that to the increased cost per employee if they want to do the buy-up option, you know, those seem to be roughly the same numbers. So like the county savings is basically giving the employees, you know, the option to go with less generous insurance. Is that approximately true? Or?
I don't know that I understood your question there, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Okay. So you know, we have an option that maybe costs the county $100,000, and I think Chris said $90,000 to $150,000 per year less. And so that divided by 146 employees, that's roughly about $1,000 per employee per year that we'd be saving. But under that plan, they get something that's less just generous. It wouldn't have the U of option. Some employees might choose to buy into the U of U option, and that would increase their costs by, again, roughly $1,000 per employee per year. And so I guess I'm getting the impression, and maybe I didn't do the numbers right, that if all the employees were to buy into this thing, it would kind of be, the total amount that both employees and the county are paying would be roughly the same. And so all we're really doing is shifting costs onto employees who choose to, under the United option, would choose to do the, I forget what you called it, but the buy-up option.
No, sure, I actually don't think that's quite accurate, is it, Renee? So the figures that Renee put into the packet, the updated packet, show full utilization of U of U in the United plan. And so that if all employees bought in, we'd still see a savings with United.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. We don't have relative to Cigna's.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we see savings, but then the question is, how much extra are the employees paying under that scenario?
You can see down below in those tables, the red Cigna one is the new plan, and it says that each employee would have to pay $125 per month, which is exactly the same as the United Healthcare, $1 more, except for the people who are having the higher deductible, $2,000, and also want the PPO plan with the U of U coverage. And those people, they would have an increase of, is it $40 per month, which is not $1,000, that's like $500 a year.
So yeah, I think that there is an increase to the the employee cost, but I mean I suppose, Renee, if we go with United and it's cheaper for us overall, it might be possible for us to reframe our premiums relative to that overall cheaper cost.
Sure. Sorry.
Hard to do
on Google, so
like this, but
sure. Absolutely. So with the proposed Cigna increase, it does make the employee premiums similar to the buy-up option on the United. I don't think, and that's why I kept kind of going back and forth on this one, on my recommendation. I picked Cigna just for simplicity's sake. I don't think that we would be offering a lesser benefit to our employees if we do choose to go United. I think it would just add some growing pains there of just getting those 4 plans out and getting some additional education out to the employees that if they felt like they needed the U of U network coverage to buy into that coverage. Like Chris mentioned, we do offer the employees on a single plan on the high deductible, $100 a month contribution into their HSA, and also $200 a month for those who are on a family or a 2-party plan. So we could look at maybe on that buy-up plan, offering a lower HSA amount for those employees to just not pay a premium on that, and then just subsidize the premium costs out of the HSA.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, do you have the utilization in this packet for HSA versus traditional? I mean, probably a question, that the commissioners might have if you're new to the commission is, why we offer the incentive for the high deductible. And that's because the increase in premiums every year is actually driven by the traditional side. And the utilization rates for the high deductible side is below 100%, which would actually, you know, if those were the only employees we had, we would be getting a rebate under Cigna because it's called what's level funded program, which we did get one year, several years ago. But that's just an explanation why there's an incentive on the high deductible side and an employee cost share on the traditional side. Just wanted to kind of make that clear.
And I do have that. Yep, I do have that breakdown. It's listed as a subscriber count on those employer costs. And I'm so sorry, I got signed out, but I think I'm getting right back in with my Gmail, so I can get that number for you.
Are you doing that, Renee? Do you know off the top of your head what percentage of employees are traditional versus high deductible?
It's definitely flipped. Since I've been in the HR, since I've started with the county, we've seen more and more go to the high deductible plan. I would think roughly we're probably about 75, 25%. So 75 being on that high deductible plan and 25 being in the traditional. There's definitely pros and cons to both plans, and it's kind of what you are willing to take on as a consumer, a healthcare consumer there for those costs. We do see.
What I heard was this increase, if we went with United to buy up, one potential way to pay for it is to decrease the benefit that's paid into the HSA. So that's still the employee paying for it. So we're still looking at decreasing benefits for employees. So I'm definitely opposed. And I haven't been able to recruit two positions all year. We're slammed. I just had to make an offer to someone in my office for $39,000 because our pay is so bad. And the only nugget I had really was our health insurance. So please keep that in mind. And of course, that candidate laughed and said, no way. I can make more money doing anything else.
And so, but I just have to re-edify that the reason why I'm trying to save money on the benefit side is to increase the salary side. And I can guarantee you that people would be drawn in by a higher salary than more likely than they would a higher benefit. But, you know, the difference between Cigna and, you know, the fully upgraded United isn't great. You know, if everybody opted into U of U coverage, we're looking at about a $94,000 savings per year. I mean, it's significant, but there's also risk associated with switching carriers. Maybe they're great, or maybe there's a lot of problems that pop up that we didn't think about. So you have to assess the fact that every time you switch carriers, you're taking a risk. Not to mention, you know, that we have to that there's disruption in Renee's office and with all the employees also learning a new system and getting set up in that system. So, you know, I'm on the fence about it. The savings, you know, isn't enough for me to take a clear position in favor of United. But it's close. I think it definitely warrants considerable discussion as we've been having.
I think the other thing to consider is that United runs our business. And so maybe they're beating Cigna this year by $94,000. And maybe next year they charge us $200,000 more than Cigna would if we'd stayed with Cigna. We don't know. And those
Cigna is perfectly capable of doing the exact same thing. And, you know, they all do that. And so, you know, they'll factor in loss on one year with the expectation of jacking things up the next. But you know, I think that there are some savings to be had, you know, and it's, you know, we're looking at close to probably a $20 million general fund budget. And let's see, 94,000 divided by 20 million. Yeah, very small percentage. And so I think it's not going to make or break anything, but you know, it can certainly have an effect of savings. I am a little bit concerned though with switching carriers when they are so close in rates.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts were similar to what Chris just said. It doesn't seem to me that the savings are big enough to justify the disruption from switching or the risk going with a untested carrier. That's assuming that people are satisfied with Cigna other than the cost.
My experience in the past has always been that anytime there's the disruption between when you change carriers is always greater than anybody anticipates. There's always a doctor that was on one network that's not on the other network. I mean, these things you can't look up. And if somebody's in the middle of a treatment, going through any type of treatment, and you disrupt them, I think you have to do that when the savings is great enough to justify it.
I just have a couple quick comments. It was a little disheartening to hear that they originally came in at, I think you guys said 12.99% increase, and then only reduced it after knowing that you put it out to competitive bid. So if we do go with Cigna, I would very, very seriously next year, if they pull the same thing, just not mess with them. And I agree, it's hard to change, but sometimes you have to make that change to save money. And in the end, we're spending taxpayer dollars. And so I think we need to very, very seriously, a 90 or 100 grand is a lot of money. And I come from, and Mary did too, I come from education where we were always extremely poorly insured. And then when I left education full time, I'm no longer insured at all. So I will state that, I think it's a great benefit to be able to insure our employees appropriately, but we also want to be really diligent about looking at our budget and doing what we can. And United, my understanding, and it's difficult to understand, is that overall it's a savings and it won't really be a huge impact to employees, but I'll do what we think is appropriate this year. But I would say that if Cigna pulls the same thing next year, we need to really to look at them seriously.
Well, yeah, and I think it's just how it goes, actually, Trish. The first number that they came in with was probably like in the 20+%, right, Renee?
I think it was, right there. I think it was like 19 point something.
Which is typical every year, actually. And then we go through a pretty months-long negotiation process. And, my goal with the carrier is always to get it into the single-digit range. This year, we couldn't get them there without going out to bid. And so we did, and now we got them down in the single-digit range. But my experience, dealing with this for over a decade is that's just how it goes every single year.
And I did have some historical data. I did go back about a decade to 2012 and just looked at the increases that we've seen in the providers we've had. Since 2012, we have had Cigna since 2015. We switched in 2016 to Select Health and then back to Cigna for the next couple of years. And all of the increases, they kind of jump around quite a bit, but they do average out at being about 9%, which I think is kind of in line with the industry standard as far as increases. And like Chris said, we do try and always go for an increase that's below a single-digit increase there, I should say.
And then thanks for bringing up that 2016 when we had that dance with Select Health. And I was wondering if anyone had the institutional memory to sort of maybe even speak to that time that we switched for 1 year and the disruption that might have occurred. Might be too long. Go to.
Yeah, I came in right at the beginning of 2017, so I've always been on Cigna. I asked around a little bit, and everyone's kind of like, well, you know, it comes with the territory of having to switch carriers, but in the middle of treatment and that disruption, not having that disruption is nice, as we know how our claims are going to get paid and things like that.
Yeah, Gabe, I seem to remember a pretty similar conversation leaving Select Health to go to Cigna, and there was a lot of concerns about the continuity and things like that. And the then council decided to go for the savings option and leave Select Health. And so, you know, the hurdles of changing were kind of overcome. So.
Yeah, I just want to say, as I'm looking at these spreadsheets more and I see, knowing that 75% of our employees are actually on the high deductible, I think is helpful, because that is shifting a big part of the cost to the employees. And it's comparing the two plans, it's a minor increase just per month to get up for the county to keep the Cigna plan compared to the United Health plan. It's like, for instance, $676 for a single for the United Health, and then $663 for the Cigna. Oh wait, are those the two? Yeah, with the $2,000 deductible. So it's actually, I'm sorry, I'm being kind of confusing. It looks to me like they're so close, but what happens is that the burden is shifted to the employees mostly for most of that increase in the United Health. So I think I'm tending towards voting for Cigna right now. I don't know if we should move this on unless other people.
Where are we on the discussion? I mean, are people ready to close the discussion and vote, or do we need to continue the discussion? Are we pretty comfortable? Kevin?
My mind's made up for Cigna, personally.
Yeah, I'm ready to vote.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. Vote was motion by Gabriel, seconded by Jacques, to stick with Cigna. All in favor of the motion, say aye and/or raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Well, I better ask, any objections? Any opposition? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Renee. That was a lot of.
Yes.
Came into
Sorry
this.
about the toddler. Thank you.
Not knowing what to do. Every year, this insurance issue is a tough one. We are to item J, approving County Commission's draft strategic plan to. Oh wait, it is 6:30. I noticed during our discussion we went past 6. Is there anyone, Mallory, in the waiting room for citizens to be heard?
Mary, I see a few folks have jumped on. I'm not sure if they're here for public comment. If so, please press *6 to unmute or turn on your camera.
I'm here to comment. This is Dana from Grand Water.
Okay, Dana.
I have a couple things I wanted to address. One is that if you look at the insurance proposal on the annual basis, it shows a certain amount. If you divide that amount by 12 on the monthly amount, it is not the same thing. And if you actually look at the insurance quotes that Renee was proposing, everything on the monthly was actually less than what was being proposed. So one of two things is happening. The annual is incorrect, or we have been paying too much on the monthly every month. The entire county, not just us, we've been paying the wrong amount for everything and for the entire year of 2021. We need to check that math and make sure that it's okay. It is we know what we've been paying, and we know what the annual that the basis was calculated on. However, I will say that if you look at that page in the packet that shows the new monthly rates, everything, all of the proposals are lower than the monthly rates that the county and the Grand Water has been paying to the county for the entire time. And so one of two things has happened. Either the annual rates are incorrect, or we have been paying more to Cigna. The entire county has been paying more to Cigna for the entire year. So we need to look at that. It's important. There's something that's incorrect in what GBH or GBS has done with the study for Renee. Something is incorrect. There's an issue. Please look at it. I really, if you look at the monthly summary on the last page of Renee's presentation, if you look at the monthly stuff, every single proposal is lower than what we have been paying monthly the entire time. So that means we've either overpaid or the annual is incorrect. So I just want you guys to look at that, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I do think that's something we should follow up on. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Cliff Kuntz from Ride with Respect.
Hello, Cliff.
Hi. So today I submitted comments on the county strategic plan, the BLM travel plan, and the Forest Service land management plan. Commissioner Stock was nice enough to reply with her rationale on the letter to the Forest Service, and I'd like to follow up on her 4 points. Commissioner Stock said that the draft letter doesn't endorse the Grand Canyon Trust's alternative. It merely asks the Forest Service to include this alternative in its range of alternatives. Asking the Forest Service to include the Grand Canyon Trust alternative would be a huge burden for the agency because they would need to analyze the alternative's impact on each one of the natural and social resources, from endangered species to economics. It would add hundreds of pages to the EIS and cost 5 or 6 figures, all for an alternative that would fail to meet the agency's multiple use mission. Number 2, Commissioner Stock said that the draft letter doesn't endorse the Forest Service recommended wilderness designations to Congress. It merely asks the Forest Service to evaluate the areas further. Actually, the draft letter states, quote, "We support and endorse not only carrying these areas forward in the evaluation process, but we also support a wilderness recommendation for these areas," unquote, when referring to the southern LaSalle, central LaSalle, east Rock Creek, Mill Creek Canyon, North WSA, North LaSalle Peaks, and Beaver Creek. Further, it supports evaluation of Mary Jane Canyon and other additions to Mill Creek, Porcupine Rim, and Pinhook, in addition to large bulbous exclusions from the Beaver Creek unit, even though these units clearly don't qualify, and evaluation of them would further tax the agency's limited resources. For time, I'll skip over the 3rd point unless you want to give me more at the end. Number 4, Commissioner Stock said regarding the recreation opportunity spectrum zoning that the impacts of motorized recreation extend far beyond the ruts in the road, and that a 50-50 split is generous. Granted, the impacts from all activities, especially motorized recreation, can extend beyond the routes. However, a 50-50 split is not generous because the non-motorized ROS zones won't allow any motorized routes, while the motorized ROS zones can and do have non-motorized routes, and they often have very few motorized routes. The best way to improve non-motorized opportunities is to build non-motorized trails, which can easily be done in motorized zones and not as easily done in primitive zones, let alone areas recommended for wilderness. You don't have to take my word for it. You can just look at what the current ROS zones from 1986 have yielded, which is 0 miles of motorized single track in the Moab Ranger District, a few miles of ATV trail in lower 2 Mile, which was open across country travel until 2009, and several miles of easy 4-wheel drive trail down in the scrub oak of Brumley and Dory Creeks. In conclusion, the current ROS zones and not the proposed ROS zones will allow future planners to consider adding a route above 8,000 feet, whether it be for e-bikes, a campground that's away from the graded roads, or anything in between. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Anyone else, Mallory?
Mary, I don't see anybody else at this time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are to approving the County Commission draft strategic plan to proceed to the next phase of the county staff and public review process within the context of the general plan redraft.
Okay, Mary,
What? Huh?
did you want
Did
me to
I-
take that there?
I think it's you and Gabriel, Sarah, and Kevin.
Yeah.
We'll all be weighing in on this. So
Okay.
the four of you take it away.
Okay, well, I'll just lead off if I could, if you don't mind, Kevin. Kevin was the chair of the subcommittee. I think we ended up with a pretty good product here, but it still needs to be vetted, I believe, through staff, as the motion says, and through the public. So it's still a draft. It will be a draft until the commission actually endorses it later, which we have set sometime in the spring of 2022. But in the meantime, we'll be embedding it into the draft general plan. Maybe I'll turn it over to Kevin just to summarize maybe some of the areas and highlights of some of the values and mission statement here. And maybe Gabe too, because he's the one that worked on the motif.
I'll turn it over to Gabe.
Thanks. Yeah. So, with regards to the language that we sort of tweaked, I would say that it would be apt to say that we used a scalpel rather than a hatchet to tweak this document and some of the language. Not really anything too whole scale, but I can kind of go quickly, sort of piece by piece, and just talk about some of the little, tweaks that might have been made. There was some language with regards to the vision statement, occupational opportunities, and we kind of switched that to economic opportunities. I don't know how much time I really need to really sort of comparing and contrasting each piece in that way, other than the fact that there were a few that we didn't touch at all, and 3 or 4, say, including the number number 6, which was economic diversity. There was a we were using some fluffy language about boosting entrepreneurial innovation in the spirit of our adventurous community, which is a lovely statement, don't get me wrong, but we decided to cut out some of that fluff and kind of get it back to brass tacks. But I would encourage everyone to kind of go back and to see some of the earlier iterations if you're really interested as a commission to really get down to the details there. And I am really looking forward. Obviously, this is just something that's been sort of vetted and crafted by us, but certainly the response and the response and just in general input from staff and from the public certainly is really valuable as part of this process. So certainly it's not done. And then I'll just, on the last page of this item, I was able to create an image that I think is really nice, based on Kevin's idea to use one of our wonderful twisting junipers. It's not perfect, and I will admit that. And it can be, this is just a kind of a first draft. It's not what I mean by it's not perfect is it does sort of, in some ways, it could be interpreted as communicating a hierarchy when that's not really the intention of the document. With regards to, if you're all looking at it right now, economic diversity in small town field could be looked at with this image as under livable community, and that's not necessarily the intention. But ultimately, I felt like the limitations of using a juniper tree and finding one with 7 limbs, but also just the overall feel accompanied with the document felt good enough to me, and certainly open to feedback on that note. And if Commissioner Stockerwalker have anything else to add, I'll let them go.
I really like the motif.
Thank you.
I like the motif too. I think Gabe summarized it pretty well. I think the intent behind these points that he and Sarah and I edited stays the same, and we just tried to make the language more concise and clearer in various places. So it's not, I think it's very much in the spirit of the last draft that we looked at as the full commission.
Questions? I'd entertain a motion. Jacques? Yes,
I would
I'd like.
move. Thanks. I'll move to forward the County Commission draft strategic plan to the next phase of county staff and public review process within the context of the general plan redraft.
Thank you, Jacques. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mary.
Thank you. Motion by Jacques, seconded by Trish. Further discussion? Thank you for your hard work. Yes, Kevin?
Yeah, I guess I had some questions for John. It looked, I didn't have as much time as I would have liked to review the packet, but it looked like you also had a draft of the general plan in there. Are we also approving that to move through the process, or like where does the strategic plan end and the general plan start in the documents that you put in the packet?
No, what I did, Kevin, is I just included the executive summary, the draft executive summary of the general plan, to show you how it would be embedded in some various segments of the general plan.
Okay, so that's just there for purposes of illustration.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, and if there's details of that part that we don't like, now is not the time to talk about?
No.
Okay, good.
Not.
See. And I also want to acknowledge, we got a comment, an email comment from Cliff Kuntz earlier about some of the indicators in this strategic plan that he thought were not quite appropriate for measuring environmental impacts. And I think he was right about the things he raised, but I also think that that list of indicators is very much a preliminary draft, and that's going to be refined through the process. So
it is, yeah.
Okay, and so I just want to, if Cliff's listening, yes, I agree with you. The things you pointed out should be changed, and I think they will be changed later in the process.
Yeah, and they're not the only ones. Obviously, there's lots there.
Yeah. It's not limited to the ones that Cliff was pointing out.
Anyone else? I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Yes. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Approving independent contractor with SCJ Alliance for the land use level of service analysis. John?
Mary, can I just get a clarification on the vote? Sarah, how did you vote the last vote? Did you vote aye?
I was just a little late, but it was aye.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mary. If I could proceed, this was an RFP that was issued in late August, and we had two proponents, very good proponents. We had a panel that selected unanimously SCJ. They're out of Washington State. I have worked with them in the past. I've actually worked with both consultants that quoted. They've got a really good track record for evaluating land use strategies, coming up with some really good long-range land use proposals. As the commission knows, this is one of those areas that we need to get ahead of the curve on. So there's a fair bit of work to do with the land use code, both OAOs and HDHOs, and how those fit into the long-range land use. And then taking a look at growth scenarios. So there's a scenario planning. Yeah. There's a scenario planning exercise here that's either taking a look at the low, medium, or all three of those, I should say, scenarios around growth, and then where growth could occur, and take a look at both residential in terms of housing, multifamily housing, long-term rental, commercial serviced industrial. Those are all obviously very important economic drivers. So for the cost of the proposal, I think we've got a good consultant to do the work here, and they'll be stepping up to the plate on November the 10th to actually start that as well. So with that, I'll just turn to see if there's any questions.
Questions? No questions. I would entertain a motion.
Yeah, I can make the motion.
Thank you.
I move to approve the contract for the land use levels of service analysis awarded to SCJ Alliance for a sum not to exceed $60,000 based on the following conditions. Number one, insurance certification to be completed, and two, minor non-substantial amendments to the contract.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. Motion by Kevin, seconded by Sarah. Discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. I don't see Evan. All in favor of the motion? Are you, okay, is Evan on the other page? No, there he is. Okay. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are approving a letter of support for the Mill Creek Community Collaborative Committee recommendation for Mill Creek Canyon. I got a call today from Kevin, and he would like to have some more time to study and comment on this proposal. Would you like to discuss that now, Kevin, or would you like to just ask to have it postponed?
No, I think a discussion now is great, and I just want to make
Okay.
clear, I think mostly the proposal is great, but I wanted to think a little bit more before saying that we endorse every single recommendation that was made. So, but if people are ready to discuss it now, it's great.
Where is the commission? Do they want to discuss it now, or do you want to bring up your concerns in a more formal way, and or your additions, I should say, maybe not concerns, and discuss it when we have those in front of us? What would the commission like to do?
Sorry, I was scrambling for a power cord there. This is
We're on Mill Creek.
Yep, item L.
Community collaboration. And Kevin was saying that, he really, he appreciates it, and he thinks there's been a lot of good work, but he didn't have the time to put into it or to do some further analysis. And there were a couple of things he had some thoughts about that he would like to include in the letter of support.
Is this very time sensitive, or is there a reason not to? Yeah.
No, it's time sensitive. It's just we don't want it to stall in the water and go nowhere. We want to get the BOM to start looking at the different things, seeing how, seeing which proposals are the most reasonable and the ones that will be most, so there's a lot of work to be done, but it's not time sensitive in that if we wait another 2 weeks to get more, to have people have more time to look over the recommendations. And if anyone wants to read the entire document, it's huge. I could have Cara or Betsy send it to you if you want to.
I'm okay postponing item L until our next regular meeting.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Motion by Evan to postpone, seconded by Kevin. Further discussion? All in favor of postponing? Anyone opposed? No. Okay, we are to adopting resolution approving the final plat of Crazy Dog Ranch, minor subdivision located at 2820 East Bench Road. Planning and Zoning Department.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, so this is an application for a minor subdivision. It's the Crazy Dog Ranch final plat. Application submitted by Scott Hansen requesting approval of a 2-lot minor subdivision located at 2820 East Bench Road. The property consists of approximately 2.26 acres and is zoned rural residential, which is a minimum density of 1 lot per acre. The minor subdivision creates 2 lots, each having more than 1 acre per parcel. East Bench Road is a dedicated 66-foot wide county right-of-way. No utilities other than individual service lines needed to be extended to serve the parcel, and the necessary utilities are in place immediately adjacent to the parcel. Staff has not identified any inconsistencies with the general plan or development issues associated with the proposed future site. The applicant has received will serve letters from Dominion Gas, Emory Telecom, Groundwater and Sewer Special Service District, Moab Valley Fire Department, Grand County Road Supervisor, and Rocky Mountain Power. No site improvements, additions, or changes are proposed or required for this application. The Groundwater Sewer and Sewer Service District easement of approximately 68 feet wide and is shown on the plat. This easement would not interfere with development of the lots. The county engineer has also approved a drainage waiver for the subdivision. And just a little background on the property itself. The applicant purchased the land with 2 older manufactured homes that existed on the property at the time, and the houses were demolished and the land is vacant at this time. The applicant will be building his personal home on 1 lot and selling the 2nd lot. So it's pretty straightforward minor subdivision final plat application up for approval.
Questions? If there's no questions, I would entertain a motion. Yes, Kevin.
I move to adopt the resolution approving the final plat of Crazy Dog Ranch, a minor subdivision.
Motion by Kevin. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jacques. Seconded by Jacques. Discussion?
I just wanted to thank you, Lisa, for mentioning that the homes have been removed. I was just looking at an aerial photo that seemed to show buildings right where the road right of way is. So glad to know that my photo was out of date. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to the consent agenda. Approving a letter to Director Greg Sheehan, Utah State Director, U.S. Department of Interior, Bureau of Land Management, in regarding Grand County, Utah's opposition to the proposed Eastern Utah Regional Connection, aka Book Cliff Highway, I-70 connection. Ratifying the chair's signature on a purchase agreement with Hanan for a John Deere 310 SL backhoe loader stock in the amount of $104,079. Ratifying the chair's signature on another purchase agreement with Hanan for John Deere backhoe attachment, angle broom, root rake, mounted hose guide for $14,614.18. Approving chair's signature on scoping comments for the revision of the Manti La Sal National Forest Land Management Plan. Approving a letter to the Bureau of Land Management regarding being a cooperative agency on the Labyrinth Rims Gemini Bridges Travel Management Plan. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agendas? Yes, Evan? You're muted.
I don't know if it'd be a substitute motion, but could we remove items Q and R for some discussion and approve items N, O, P?
So you are asking to approve items N, O, P as a consent agenda, pulling items Q and R out of consent to discuss.
Correct.
Is that what your motion is? Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Gabriel. Motion by Evan, seconded by Gabriel to approve N, O, and P and discuss Q and R. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, item N, O, and P have been approved. We will now discuss approving chair's signature on scoping comments for a revision of the Manti LaSalle National Forest Land Management Plan.
I guess I wanted to bring it up just because it seemed like a little more of an action item than just a kind of housekeeping sort of thing. And so I thought it warranted some discussion, especially since we were receiving public comment from, I'm not sure, his director of one of our county committees.
Yes, so I agree with you. That was a good idea. That was a good idea. So want to start the discussion, Evan?
I would agree with Cliff that some of the levels of wilderness kind of raise some question for me. And one of the things that doesn't really get evaluated either is winter use. And I know that there's some non-motorized winter areas that can be contested too. And or I was hesitant to apply some of these kind of wilderness standards as widely as what was kind of outlined under the wilderness evaluation. I didn't get real deep into the roadless area sort of things. I think that this just got a little more specific than I think we had to discuss together as a body. So I guess that's my attempt to open discussion.
Thank you. That's a, comments?
So I do support the letter. I think Evan's right that, you know, if there's interest to discuss, or if we're getting public comment, we should take it off the consent agenda. So thanks for taking the initiative to do that. I support the letter. I didn't write it. In fact, I was working on a different letter, and then I realized that Mary had already taken care of it. You know, there's, you know, zillions of details in these forest plan revisions, but if we just sort of take a step back, and I know all of us have spent a lot of time up in the LaSalles, and if our impression up there is like, wow, there's like too many roadless areas and, you know, places where we need to have additional roads and not enough motorized stuff going on, then we might disagree with the letter. But I think, you know, the letter's just nudging it in the direction saying that, you know, maybe things are a little bit too chopped up by roads and things like that, and maybe we need to be a little bit more conservation minded. Sorry, lost my train of thought, but I just think overall, especially with increasing use levels, you know, you can have the same road network with light usage and it doesn't cause much of an impact, and heavy usage, it does cause a lot of impact. And I think in thinking about where we're going to allow, you know, motorized and non-motorized things, both in the summer and in the winter, we should plan on increasing usage over the next 10 or 20 years. And I think the road network that's up there now is too dense and doesn't leave enough areas that are, you know, more than say a half mile from a road. So I like the general thrust of the letter. I wish I had started earlier and come up with a letter that went into a great more detail about this, but I'm glad that we are weighing in on this.
My comment kind of has to do with like what I said to Cliff in response to this, which is I think this is scoping comments for this forest plan. So this isn't an end-all decision, and I think it transfers a tone, like Kevin's talking about. We want to see an actual change in management towards more conservation-oriented things, towards climate adaptation and habitat protection. And I think this letter does that nicely. I'm not concerned about the details with those wilderness units that were mentioned, because often when wilderness finally gets designated or gets talked about, like, we're not looking at maps. I'm sure that there would be cherry stemmed roads into some of those sections. It's just encouraging the Forest Service to actually take a hard look at that and to consider it, and outlining what I think that our commission's preference to actually do something to protect this land in the long run. So I'm grateful for the language in here. And I also just, and for the consideration of the alternative, the conservation alternative as well. I think it's important to, for the county to voice support for some of these ideas, to have further analysis, because that's all we're asking for is for the scoping to consider these alternatives and for us to be able to weigh in again at a future date during the final environmental impact statement with more hard recommendations.
I'm a little bit on the fence about it. I think the wording of the letter is great. I think considering all possible conservation is very important. I guess my biggest concern is with. I'm sorry.
We lost you.
My biggest concern is with some of the potential wilderness areas that were talked about in the letter and precluding mechanized travel, particularly cycling in some of that wilderness.
Well, thank you. Personally, I think at this point in the history of our world, the universe, is the greatest threat facing us is climate change and what's happening to our Earth. It's scary, and in some ways it's tragic. We protect very little of our nature, and so I think encouraging agencies to look hard at protecting and preserving is something that we need to do in order to move forward in addressing climate change. So that's my thoughts. Of course, I was instrumental in creating it. Any other comments, discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote.
I just want to note quickly that earlier today, the San Juan County Commission approved a letter to the Forest Service endorsing, studying the the Grand Canyon Trust Plan, conservation alternative, and the city of Moab has also sent the forest a letter raising similar concerns. So we're not alone or getting out ahead of other local governments in doing this.
Yeah, I support the general tone of the letter, and I apologize for not contributing to the drafting earlier, kind of as Kevin was mentioning.
I apologize too. Sorry.
Yeah, well, long before you were even on the commission, Kevin, I had volunteered to shoulder a lot of this, and now in the 11th hour, when others have put work into it, I'm like, oh no, I don't like the work you did. So I'm kind of the guy that I hate to work with. So my apologies for being that person. Just in order to keep it moving, I won't continue the discussion here. I guess that I'm probably will vote in opposition, and not because of not supporting what it's saying, but just to maybe strike some of the things from the letter. But if the majority of the commission likes this draft that it's in, it's to Sarah's Sarah's point. This is just kind of to keep the planning process going. And I don't think that anything we're saying here is set in stone. And so if the majority of the commission is comfortable with this, I'm fine with sending this along as is.
And it seems like we have been on this for a long time without ever making a stand or saying anything. This process has been, I don't know how many years it's been in the national park, the National Forest has been working on this. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Did somebody make a motion?
No, I don't think I.
I can make a motion. Or-
Okay, I don't know. I'm sorry. We made the motion to take it out of the, so Sarah makes a motion. Who's going to second it?
Yeah, I move to approve the letter approving the chair's signature on scoping comments for the revision of the Manti LaSalle National Forest Management Plan.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have a second? Seconded by Kevin. Any further discussion?
Just really quick, Mary, did we take out Q and R from, did we remove those? Are we putting those, am I wrong about that?
We took out Q and R.
We
and R. So we're going to discuss R.
So we still haven't dealt with R?
No.
No.
No, we just did Q, we'll do R next.
Okay.
And we already approved NOP.
Yeah, got that.
NOP, we're on Q. So any further discussion? Motion by Sarah, seconded by Kevin. All in favor? All opposed? In opposition? Jacques?
I'll abstain.
Okay, so the motion passes 5-2. Evan Clapper in opposition, Jacques Hadler abstaining. Thank you. Okay, now we're approving letter to the Bureau of Land Management regarding the being a cooperative agency on the Labyrinth Rims Gemini Bridges Travel Management Plan. Who would like to begin the discussion? Should you, Evan?
Well, I guess in order to have a discussion, we need a motion. So I'll go ahead and make the suggested motion that I move to approve the chair's signature on the letter to the BLM regarding the Grand County Commission status as a cooperating agency on the Labyrinth Rim Gemini Bridges Travel Management Plan.
Thank you. Motion by Evan. Do I have a second? Seconded by Sarah. Discussion.
I can lead in. I mean, I wrote this letter and then with the help of Kevin. And so the BLM has released some preliminary maps, which I included in the packet. And those maps, I think, fall far short of even beginning to address many of the issues that we originally sent to the BLM for consideration. And so this is just a more detailed letter about specific areas in the hopes that the BLM starts to really engage the county commission as a cooperating agency. In other places, the county commissions have been contacted well before any drafts are available at all, like in Emery County or the San Rafael travel plan, and had a lot of input into those plans. So I'd like to see Grand County having a similar access to the planning documents beforehand. And I also still feel very strongly that the bottom of Labyrinth Canyon needs to be looked at for road closures. And there's no easy way to say that, I guess, except for that it would benefit a huge number of users on the Green River. And it would, yeah, I guess I'll leave it there. Kevin, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, because I've spoken with some BLM staffers about these issues over the past few days, you know, after the letter was written. I think I agree with the general thrust of the letter. I think, you know, we sent them a letter making some suggestions a few months ago, and some of those suggestions are, a significant part of them are not present in any of the alternatives they're considering. So that's very disappointing. I think what the BLM isn't here, but what they would say in their defense is, one, all of this is more complicated because it's not an ordinary EA, it's an EA that's taking place in the context of a settlement of a lawsuit. And so they have a kind of, less flexibility. They think they have less flexibility than they normally would in the EA process because the settlement specifies, certain alternatives shall be at least at thus and such times, and every time they make a decision, they have to consult with their solicitors. I think the other thing the BLM would say in their defense is that they did engage the county quite a bit in the form of Greg Halliday and Bill Jackson in doing the very early work on some of these alternatives. And I think from their point of view, they gave Grand County a lot of influence, and then Grand County, after an election, Grand County's priorities changed. I don't know if the full commission ever weighed in 2020 on this. So I don't want to suggest that the BLM is being horrible or doing things. And I did try to tone Sarah's original letter down just a little bit. But I think the real point is that they're heading in a direction that I think we as a commission are on record as opposing. And I think the things we're asking for in terms of a fair allocation of recreational opportunities in this area and having at least some of the area where you can get far away from a motorized trail, none of the current alternatives do that. And so this letter asks them to, slow down a little bit and, think harder about these things. And I'm fond of, silly analogies, but I think of the BLM or probably any federal agency as like a giant ocean liner. And if you want to turn its direction, if you're, say, a tugboat, you have to push really hard in one direction just to get them to move a little bit in that direction. And I think that's what this letter is doing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Discussion? Okay, I'll call for a motion. Call for a vote. All in favor of approving the letter to the Bureau of Land Management regarding being a cooperative agent for the Labyrinth Rim, Gemini Bridges Travel Management Plan. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to discussion item. Discussion on Thompson Springs partial layout and proposed plating process. John Gunther.
Thank you, Mary. So this is not, there's no motion involved with this, it's just information. We went out to Thompson Springs 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, and had a discussion on a number of topics. One of them was water. One was also the plating process or subdivision process primarily north of the tracks, and it's a mess. So we're proposing is to move ahead with a public process here. The goal probably would be in the end, because you need complete unanimous agreement with everyone to actually change subdivision lines, would likely be a forced replating process. I'm guessing that's going to be the final result, which is a public hearing process. Commission's probably been through that before. So, but in the meantime, what we'd like to do is prepare the area for that, work with the public there, and there's a number of dates. Some of these dates will have to move. I think one I've got here is actually November 26th is Thanksgiving. So we've shared this with John Corkery and the water board out there. Trish, I'm not sure if you have or not, but so this is the county commission report. October 25th would be the planning commission update, which is backwards actually, but we wanted to get this going. November 10th is the general plan open house, which kind of feeds into some of this because that's where the land use strategy is discussed, and some end zoning out there will be important too. Working with the community group or next steps, that'd probably be the week after November 26th. And January 22nd, Lucas, our county surveyor, is working diligently on where all the lines are. There's lots of parcel issues that have to be settled with the county and with private landowners. And then we would do a draft, tie this back into the draft land use study, land use code changes, and the replatting status all wrapped in together in one neat, nice little bow. Very maybe idealistic, I don't know. So are there any questions? I'm certainly prepared to answer.
Yeah, so I have sort of a naive question. So when you say there's the platting's a mess, it means like the legal descriptions don't close up, or they overlap?
No, the parcel lines are all over the place. So people have built in areas that they thought were theirs, and they're encroaching across property lines. And then the road, where the road alignment is messed up too. It's not in the right place. And there's lanes that are actually, if you've ever seen the plan, it's almost everything you think of would be wrong.
Okay. Okay, so the idea then is we're just sort of bringing the plats more into alignment with with the reality on the ground.
That's right.
This is neutral in terms of more lots or fewer lots or anything like that. It's not.
That's
trying
right.
to change that.
No. It would actually probably eliminate some of the county lanes, which are not being used for county lanes. And we've worked with Bill Jackson on this too, and then establishing our road right away to make sure it's legal. This would give everybody kind of a level of comfort. I mean, not everybody would agree, of course, but a level of comfort that they actually own what they own. And then encroachments are all settled. So that's the goal, is to get to that point.
Any further? Any questions?
Do we have a moderator lined up?
Yeah. Well, we're going to try to do it, Evan, but you can certainly help us if you'd like.
He did pretty good out there. He did pretty good. There was not a lot of contention during your presentation, John, at all.
The county sheriff was there, though, which...
That's true. The sheriff was there. Good point.
Still, probably in Thompson, that's quite an accomplishment. So well done, John.
No, it was a good group. It was a really good group. I have to say that. Pretty positive.
Cool. Good.
No, this I've been hearing about these issues since coming onto the commission. So I like seeing a timeline with bullet points and dates associated with them. So this is great. Thanks for the update. I'm offering you best of luck. And
need a little bit of that. Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot there to straighten out. No one's fault, but I'm sure the man to do it.
Okay, thanks, Evan.
Any further comments? Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to tackle this issue. Thank you very much. We are to calendar items and special events. Mallory. Mallory, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm doing the computer and phone, but we are, for special events, I am learning kind of in the thick of it. There's quite a few coming up. We have Brexy Queen of the Desert, which is actually a mountain bike race, and it crosses into Utah, or Grand County to be specific, of course, but a very, very short stretch. I want to say 8 miles. And the rest of it is all in Colorado and circles back to Colorado. Let's see. There's a Barrels for Bucks event out at Osta this weekend. We have Trans Rockies Moab Rocks, October 16th. The Cregan Classic, October 29th through the 31st. The Dead Horse Ultra, November 21st. And the Moab Trail Marathon, November 6th. One thing I will add, just in case y'all hear about it, is that Trunk or Treat will not be held at Osta this year. They're actually going to the city, and I believe the reasoning for that is just because the specific date that they wanted wasn't held for them. It was Halloween that was held for them. And ultimately, they decided they wanted to do it on Saturday rather than on the Sunday, that Halloween will fall this year. So just if you are aware of that or hear about it, that is the reasoning why they've gone to the city this year. And another thing would be what we talked about earlier, the November 3rd meeting on a Wednesday. And my only question for you all is if we want to talk now about scheduling the budget workshops in November that Chris talked about, or if that would be best to do through an email and maybe a doodle poll.
So what were you saying about the workshop, Mallory?
I didn't know if y'all wanted to look at scheduling that now or talking through availability or to do a doodle poll and try to figure out the dates and times for those.
Is it easier to talk it through now, or would it be easier? I know some people hate them, but to do a doodle poll?
I think a doodle poll. That's
I
my
think,
opinion.
I mean, it's, yeah, if we're going to have that many workshops, I think put out a whole bunch of choices and we'll see which ones allow the most people to be present, and of course make sure it's times that you and Chris and Quinn can be there.
That sounds good, and y'all are very responsive, so I think the doodle poll will actually work very nicely. So,
Can we talk generally
all that I
about which week, or is that what we're going to decide?
Well, I'm actually proposing to try to schedule one for all 4 weeks in November.
Okay.
We've done that in the past.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, so I guess the typical process would be, you know, the Budget Advisory Board works for a couple months on the budget and presents a tentative budget to the commission in the first meeting in November, which you'll then approve, and then set the hearing date in December. And you know, commissions are a little weird in that you hold both executive and legislative authority. So what's happening here is you've delegated your executive authority for preparing the budget to the Budget Advisory Board. Then they provide you with the tentative budget, which you then adopt. And then in November, you exercise your sort of legislative hat. You put your legislative hat on and then tweak the budget. And hopefully that would be the one that you hold a hearing on in December and ultimately adopt. And so it's sort of the legislative side of the budgeting process in November. And so we'll switch over from Budget Advisory Board to Commission. And I'm proposing, you know, to try to meet once a week for all 4 weeks in November so that we can be sure that we can hammer out all the questions and details. I think there's going to be a lot to try to decide.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. So just FYI on the scheduling, at our November 3rd meeting, I'm going to be in airplanes like 12:30 to 6:30. So I would only be able to attend if it's morning or late in the evening.
Okay, and then, you know, the actual approval will happen second meeting in December. So, you know, if somebody misses one of the budget workshop meetings, you know, you can still convey your philosophy or your ideas, you know, and they can be incorporated all the way up until we need to actually approve the budget, which technically is December 31. We try to do it, you know, the second meeting in December. There was one year, I think, where we had to schedule a special meeting close to the holidays, but that's not ideal, obviously.
It was awful. Let's put it that way. That was a hard budget year.
But suffice it to say that you don't necessarily have to attend all the meetings to get your input in and to have an opportunity to consider alterations all the way up into the point where we actually approve it.
Okay.
I don't think there's ever been a time that every commissioner has been at every meeting. It's just impossible with 7 people and the constraints. Okay. Is anyone going to the UAC convention? Is anybody planning to do that?
I am not planning on it.
Anyone?
Neither am I.
I'm going to a wedding, so there's not going to be any representation, it sounds like, from the commission, which is okay. I just was curious. But okay, so we just have to help, or does Debbie just get the gift? Chris?
In the past, you know, it's, I guess, mostly been, you know, a long time ago, I think it was Diana that usually would get the gift. but there's no like designated person that does it. And so whoever's going, you know, somebody could help out and get it and then give it over to the person that's going, or the person that's going can get it. You just have to work that out among yourselves.
Okay, I'll
It sounds
talk.
like it's the assessor's office turn to take on the gift versus the clerk's office.
Okay, I'll email Debbie and ask if she'll take that job on.
Do we know if August is going? I think he's got all our promotional swag. If
yeah, and we usually, you know, give some of that, but oftentimes, you know, there'll be something a little more special than just
yeah,
you know, like a notebook or whatever, and a
And
duffel bag.
it's mostly for elected officials. I don't know if August would be part of it. I don't know if they.
Well, I think
you know.
I think what Evan's getting at is the Travel Council has provided some of the gift in the past, just sort of the typical Moab area swag that they have. Like, you know, they have. I think they have like notebooks, duffel bags, and stuff. But you know, in the past, I think Diana got like a handmade quilt or something like that. Different things like that, you know, that are sort of local from Grand County kind of things. There, you know, other counties will like bring guns and stuff.
Yeah,
it's true. This is true.
I think we should send something from our new distillery, the old Company of the Year. But
Oh yeah, let's do that. $70 bottle of whiskey.
We can get a custom groover from Eddie Line and send that.
Could the gift be something like a guided tour, like a river trip or something like that? That's indicative of Grand County.
I don't think there's any rules about it.
Yeah, I think they've done ATV rides in some of the other counties.
Evan, I'll take you up Castleton.
Yeah.
Well, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss pending or reasonable intimate litigation.
So moved.
So that motion by Evan, do we have a second? Was that it? Was that you, Evan?
Sure.
Second,
yep.
Sarah? Okay. I just heard somebody say so moved. Okay, motion by Evan, seconded by Sarah. The time is 7:32. All in favor of going into closed session? Raise your hand. Anyone opposed?